Hey guys, tonight we slip back to September of 1666, and London smells faintly of soot, ale, and yesterday's fish. You're drowsing in a cramped wooden house above a bakery in Pudding Lane. Your mattress lumpy with straw, the air close and heavy. The city is still recovering from the Great Plague that clawed through its alleys just a year earlier, and everyone has whispered prayers that life might finally calm down. But it won't, because tonight, a single careless spark is going to turn London into a furnace. And you're right in the middle of it. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bakery below you hums with warmth, but that warmth is different tonight. Sharper, more insistent, the kind that licks at the edges of floorboards. The ovens have been banked badly, coals shifting in the dark like tiny predators. You stir in your sleep, half dreaming that the floor is glowing beneath you. Outside, the lane is silent except for the occasional clop of hooves and the muffled curse of a night watchman. London is wood and pitch and tar. Half-timbered houses press so tightly together you could pass a mug of ale from one attic window to another. A single flame here isn't a household accident. It's a prophecy. By the time you stumble to the window, the night is already alive. The air tastes of burning rye and oak. Somewhere downstairs, barrels of flour begin to catch, and you hear the snap of beams surrendering. You're groggy, barefoot, and blinking against smoke that stings your eyes. A neighbor across the lane leans out in a nightshirt, shouting something about water buckets, but the wind answers first. A gust rushes down Pudding Lane as if the devil himself has puffed his cheeks, and embers scatter like fireflies. One lands on a thatched roof 2 doors away. Another finds a pile of kindling. Within minutes, the street is no longer dark. It is glowing, each house rimmed in flickering orange. You cough hard enough to double over, dragging a blanket across your shoulders. It's almost funny how human instinct clings to comfort. You think of saving the blanket before you think of saving yourself. Down below, people are already in the street. Some with pails, others with nothing but open mouths and open arms, screaming for family. Bells begin to toll, not in neat rhythm, but in panicked clamor. The city's warning system is sound itself, the four. Clang of iron on iron, the only language fast enough to spread alarm. Londoners have lived with fire drills forever. Every parish keeps leather buckets, axes, and fire hooks meant to rip down burning timbers before flames leap. But the fire is already laughing at that plan. You hear someone shout, "It's only a bakery," as though mocking the idea that bread could betray a city. Yet the bakery is gone already, collapsing inward in a roar of sparks. A woman pushes past you, clutching a bundle of linens to her chest, as if cloth will outlast flame. You glance at her and absurdly think of your own laundry waiting to be washed. That's how survival sneaks up. Through small, silly distractions that remind you of normal life as it evaporates. The heat presses harder, blistering against your skin. It's not the cozy warmth of a hearth, but a feral wave that drives you. Back from the window, you can taste wood resins, fat from cooking pans, and something acrid that makes your throat itch. A horse bolts past, reins trailing, hooves striking sparks off the cobbles. London has never smelled like this. Like every craft and trade burning at once. Tallow, pitch, flour, wool. Historians still argue whether the Lord Mayor himself was summoned within the first hour, or whether he stayed abed muttering that a woman could piss the fire out. Either way, the delay is fatal. You grab what you can, a pouch of coins, a hunk of bread gone stale, the blanket still hanging off your shoulders. A joke crosses your mind. How ironic that after surviving plague, rats and their fleas, you're now being chased out by toasted breadcrumbs. You laugh once, then cough again. A dry bark that shakes your ribs. The stairs are already filling with smoke. So you take them two at a time, half blinded, your fingers sliding along plaster. Down below, the bakery is gone, a hollowed out maw, pouring heat. You press into the street, where the fire behaves less like an accident and more like a predator, hunting down timbers with purpose. The neighbors are divided between those who douse with buckets and those who run. Someone shouts that fire breaks must be made, houses pulled down to starve the flames, but no one moves to sacrifice their own home. Not yet. And you stand there, paralyzed for a moment by the scale of it. The way one street of wooden houses can suddenly feel like the entire city. You think of St. Paul's Dome in the distance, of the tower's stone walls, of the sprawl of warehouses by the river. You can almost see the map of London catching light, one glowing street at a time. Then a child's scream cuts through the clamour, and you move again, because hesitation now is its own kind of death. You push into the crowd, jostled, elbowed, losing your balance as people pour into alleys. The ground is littered with broken crockery, trampled shoes, a dropped loaf of bread already smouldering. You can hear the fire behind you, closer than it should be. Every time you look back, it's gained another house. The wind has decided the fire deserves to win, and through it all, the strangest thought nags at you. This is only the beginning. Your first cries of alarm have barely left your throat before the fire makes its choice. It wants east, it wants fast, and it wants everything in its path. You're standing there with the blanket still around your shoulders, the one you clutched, out of instinct. But the night has shifted beyond blankets and belongings. A stiff wind tears down Pudding Lane like an angry courier, scattering sparks into the roofs stacked tight as dominoes. And as you watch the orange light crawl and leap, the frightening truth presses into you. London is a wooden city, and you are inside a tinderbox. The smoke thickens quickly, turning your view of the street into a shifting grey wall. Each time, the wind snaps. A fresh cluster of sparks dances over eaves and settles like glowing insects. You hear someone shouting, "Fetch water." But the pumps are far, the Thames is farther, and the flames are already ahead of you. You don't think of engineering flaws in the moment, but historians later would. London's houses are jigsaw, puzzles of timber frames, pitch-sealed joints, and overhanging gables. Add dry summer weather. Add barrels of tar stored by the shipyards. Add grain dust, hanging in the air like invisible kindling. Suddenly the fire doesn't need help. It only needs time. You stumble into Fish Street Hill, coughing so hard, your stomach muscles ache. The fire follows like a predator on your heels. Someone collides with you, a man balancing a trunk on his back, the wood box thudding against your shoulder as he staggers. His face is slick with sweat, his eyes wild. "Help! Me with it!" he cries. But you can't. Not because you won't, but because your lungs have decided that every step is already rebellion. You push on, shoving past him, half dizzy from smoke and fear. Above you, the night sky glows like sunrise, though the moon is still overhead. You can actually hear roofs collapsing. First a crack, then a groan, then a noise like thunder. The sound rattles your bones. Chimneys topple. Tiles crash into the street. The air is suddenly filled with a rain of fragments, tiny shards of brick, burning wood. You flinch, covering your head with your blanket, and press forward. The fire leaps, again, carried on that cruel wind. Within minutes, it has reached Gracechurch Street, swallowing it whole. You smell the mixed stench of wool shops, candle warehouses, and oil stores feeding the blaze. Each trade becomes a different flavour of smoke, wax, pitch, rancid fat, all bitter in your throat. And in some twisted corner of your mind, you realise London is announcing itself in layers. The city you knew in daylight now describes itself in scent and flame. A group of watchmen rush past, shouting for hooks and axes. Their job is brutal, to rip apart houses before the fire can use them. But most citizens scream at them, begging them to spare their homes. A woman in a torn nightgown clings to one of the men, shrieking that her children are still inside, even as the roof of her house glows red. He shakes her off, but does not enter. The balance of saving lives versus saving structures tilts uneasily, and you understand now why survivors later said the city burned less because of fate and more because of hesitation. By dawn, the fire has a personality. It is not random anymore. It chooses. It races east toward the river, swallowing lanes and alleys in orderly hunger. By the wharves, warehouses stacked with sugar, hemp and timber ignite in booming explosions, sending chunks of burning debris across the water. Barges pull away from the docks in blind panic, overloaded with families, barrels, cages of chickens. One capsizes in the current, and you hear the screams before the Thames swallows them. You keep moving, though every muscle screams for rest. You clutch your pouch of coins and stale bread, absurd treasures compared to the city vanishing around you. But you don't dare drop them. Survival is never rational, it's stubborn. Even as you cough and stagger, you think, if you reach safety, you'll need these things. You'll need proof you were someone before the fire tried to erase you. As the sun rises, it casts an eerie daylight across a city already brighter than morning. Flames stretch high into the sky, sparks leaping across whole streets. The wind has become an accomplice, a conspirator that cannot be bribed or stopped. You hear it roar in the flames like laughter, mocking every bucket of water splashed against glowing beams. And though you tell yourself you'll find safety beyond the walls, you know instinctively the fire is faster than walls. Somewhere behind you, bells toll again. They are almost frantic now, every parish clanging at once. It's supposed to be a warning, but it feels like a funeral song, like London wringing itself out of existence. People around you shout conflicting advice. Run north, run south, find the boats, climb to the fields. You realize there is no map anymore, no city grid to follow. The streets are becoming rivers of flame and crowd. Choices are reduced to one: forward, always forward. And as you stumble along with the herd of smoke-blackened faces, a strange thought nags. Maybe the fire isn't spreading at all. Maybe you're simply shrinking, pushed smaller and smaller by something that intends to consume the entire world. Still, your legs move, because they must. The night deepens into chaos, and London feels less like a city and more like a stage set on fire, every actor improvising in terror. You stagger into a side lane, but the smoke follows like a living creature, curling at your heels. Bells clang, in scattered rhythm, their peals mixing with shouts, sobs, and the crash of timbers giving way. You think briefly of the plague year just behind you. How quiet the city had been then. How still the streets felt compared to this thunder of human panic. Fear during plague had been invisible, creeping through touch and breath. Fear now is fire made flesh, obvious and merciless. The confusion around you builds with every heartbeat. Some shout for water pumps, others scream to run. Families shove carts packed with bed frames and pots, chickens flapping in wicker cages, dogs barking madly until they're dragged along on ropes. The cobbled streets clog with this jumble of desperation. A man curses when his wheel splinters, the cart spilling onto the stones. His wife shrieks at him to leave it, but he scrabbles at the broken wood like a miser, unwilling to abandon his furniture. The fire has not yet reached them, but the smoke presses like an invisible hand. You feel it too, the strange tug-of-war between instinct to flee and instinct to cling. What would you save if your house burned? A trinket, a blanket, a book. Tonight, Londoners are deciding in real time, and the answers look absurd. One woman carries nothing but a single looking glass, its gilt edges glinting in firelight. Another man drags a sack that leaks flour, leaving a pale trail that will bake hard on the cobbles before morning. Children carry kittens, dolls, or nothing at all but their parents' hands. Above all this, the fire sounds louder than voices. There is a steady roar, like waves against cliffs, rising and falling as roofs collapse and towers buckle. When you cough now, it feels like your lungs are lined with grit. You taste resin, tar, smoke, and ashes of a city turning to powder. You try to move east toward the river, thinking boats might save you, but the crowd pushes north, herded like cattle by alleys too narrow for escape. At a corner, Two groups collide. One pressing forward, one trying to retreat. For a moment, the press of bodies is suffocating. Your ribs ache under elbows. Your blanket is yanked off, and you nearly fall beneath stomping feet. You claw your way free, dizzy with panic. Survival is suddenly about inches. In the distance, you glimpse flames licking at the roof of a church. Sparks pour upward like a shower of stars, carried off by the wind to ignite another quarter. A man near you mutters that God himself is punishing London for its sins. Another swears foreigners set the fire on purpose. Rumours sprout as quickly as flames, and neither can be put out. Historians still argue whether the fire was spread mostly by negligence, wind, or deliberate sabotage. But in the moment, you don't care who to blame. You just want air. The bells keep tolling. Each ring is supposed to coordinate bucket brigades. But the city has outgrown its own defences. Parish after parish burns. At one crossing, you see a watchman collapse with exhaustion, his leather bucket falling from his hand. The water inside sizzles uselessly on the stones. His companion tugs at his arm, begging him to rise, but the man only wheezes, his face smeared black with soot. Around you, the fire's glow grows brighter still. Shadows warp along the walls, stretching tall as giants, dancing grotesque across plaster and wood. In some windows, families still linger, leaning out and screaming for ladders. But ladders are too short, and the flames too fast. A roof groans and crashes inward, spraying sparks, and the silhouettes vanish into orange light. You squeeze your eyes shut, not because you can't look, but because looking feels like betrayal. You can't save them. You stumble onward, coughing hard, the smoke clawing down your throat. Your stomach churns, not just from fear, but from the taste of ashes coating your tongue. You lean against a wall to steady yourself, only to feel heat pressing through the plaster. The house is already aflame within. You jerk away, realizing even stone and brick have limits in this furnace. By now, the crowd is thinner. Some have escaped to the river, others lost in alleys. You pass a man slumped against a barrel, his hands shaking as he tries to light a pipe. The absurdity nearly makes you laugh, smoking while the city itself burns. But maybe he simply wants one last comfort, one familiar taste in a night where nothing else is sane. Suddenly, a horse bolts from the smoke, eyes rolling white, mane, blazing with cinders caught in its hair. It careens past, dragging a half-burnt cart that scatters embers across the lane. The sight jolts you into motion again, and you run without direction, trusting only your legs. The ground itself grows treacherous. Ash drifts like snow, softening. The cobbles, hiding broken glass and debris that slice at your bare feet. You limp now, every step painful, but stopping is worse. Always worse. The fire is not behind you. It is everywhere, a shifting horizon of red and gold. You reach a square where people have gathered, huddling around a fountain. Buckets line the edge, but the water seems useless, barely sloshed over planks that are already burning. Some kneel and pray, others scream at the sky. One man insists the fire will stop at the city wall. Another swears it will leap it easily. You realize with a chill that nobody knows. Not the watch, not the mayor, not the king himself if he were here. Through it all, you feel the strangest calm sliding over you like a trick, because once the fire owns the night, there's no plan left, only motion, only survival. And so you move again, away from the fountain, away from the shrieking prayers. The bells toll on, but they sound more distant now, muffled by the roar of the inferno. Each step feels like walking into a dream, the world unreal, the city you knew dissolving into smoke. The night is long, and it has only just begun. The moment you realize you can't outrun the fire forever, another grim calculation intrudes. What do you actually take with you? It seems like such a simple choice, but standing in your smoky doorway, the weight of survival feels heavier than the bundle of bread, coins, and blankets in your arms. Packing in panic is never graceful. Your mind runs faster than your hands. and your hands grab whatever they brush against. That's how you end up clutching both a loaf of stale rye and a chamber pot lid, as though either will protect you from a wall of flame. Londoners all around you are making the same frantic selections. From one attic window, you see a man lowering a trunk with ropes, only for it to smash open on the cobbles and scatter books, letters, and loose pages that flutter away like flaming birds. A woman staggers past with nothing but a parrot cage, the bird shrieking, "Fire! Fire!" with eerie accuracy. People drag tapestries through doorways, roll barrels of ale into carts, and shove children up onto donkeys' backs. It's absurd, surreal, and terrifying. Everyone is improvising survival while the fire chooses what actually matters. Inside your own house, the smoke is thick, but you linger just a few more minutes. The floorboards groan. You try to decide: coins, bedding, bread, clothes. The coins you need for bribes, the bread for hunger, the bedding for shelter. The clothes seem practical, but only if you live long enough to wear them. You shove as much as you can into a bundle, cinching it with a cord. The act feels clumsy, almost insulting, like stuffing your entire life into a sack fit for potatoes. And then you remember something. A little joke, really. Samuel Pepys, that ever-curious diarist, would later confess that when the fire reached his own neighborhood, he dug a pit and buried not only important papers, but also a wheel of Parmesan cheese and several bottles of wine. Imagine that, history's great inferno, and someone is crouching with a shovel muttering, "Not the cheese!" You half laugh through the smoke, then choke, coughing until your ribs ache. But it helps. Sometimes humor is the only thing keeping you upright. You sling your bundle onto your shoulder and stagger back into the street. Already the smoke has thickened to a strange twilight, the sun a weak disk behind it. The fire eats, not just houses, but the very daylight, turning morning into an orange dusk. All around, neighbors are in the same frenzy, shoving belongings into wheelbarrows, onto carts, onto dogs, even into their own arms until they can't carry more. Chats, air is filled with shouting, "Bring water! Fetch the hooks! Leave it!" Some voices cry commands, others cry despair. At one doorway, a boy begs his father to save the family Bible, while the father hauls out a barrel of salted fish instead. Priorities are never uniform. Later, historians would note that countless libraries and records were lost forever, whole, archives gone in one night. But in the moment, a barrel of fish might mean another week alive. You follow the crowd eastward. In one narrow lane, you witness a strange sight. A group of men with firehooks actually tearing down a roof beam, while the family inside screams at them to stop. The plan is logical. Create a firebreak before the flames leap. But reason is no. Comfort when your home is splintering beneath an axe. A woman throws crockery at the men, shouting curses. They keep chopping, their faces grim, their arms steady, because the fire is already licking the eaves above. You press on. The bundle on your shoulder digs into your skin. Sweat stings your eyes. The weight feels like betrayal, as though the very things you saved are the things that will slow you down. You stop once, gasping, to readjust. A piece of bread falls onto the cobbles. You think about leaving it, but your stomach growls, and you stoop to snatch it up before the crowd tramples it into ash. That's survival, undignified, practical, stubborn. As you stumble forward, a thought gnaws at you. What if you packed wrong? What if you should have chosen water instead of bedding, tools instead of bread? Historians still argue whether those who saved heavy goods survived longer or simply doomed themselves with weight. Tonight, you don't have the luxury of debate. You only have breath and legs. You hear explosions now, muffled booms as warehouses ignite by the river. Barrels of oil, gunpowder, and pitch erupt, sending glowing fragments spinning through the air. Some land in nearby alleys, starting new fires. Others plunge into the Thames itself, hissing and sputtering like drowned fireworks. The sound rattles your bones, and you clutch your bundle tighter, absurdly afraid it will leap from your arms. A new wave of refugees floods the street, some dragging carts, others pushing wheelbarrows, some carrying children on their backs. and the same press is suffocating. You stumble, nearly falling beneath a cart's wheel, but someone seizes your arm and hauls you up. It's a stranger, his face blackened with soot, eyes bloodshot from smoke. He says nothing, just releases you and vanishes back into the crowd. It reminds you that even in panic, scraps of kindness survive. And then you see him, a merchant staggering, with a chest so large it nearly drags on the ground. His face is twisted with strain, veins bulging at his temples. He screams at others to help, but no one stops. Within minutes he collapses, chest and man both swallowed by sparks. You look away because the truth is unbearable. Survival sometimes means letting someone else fail. The bundle on your shoulder feels heavier than ever. You wish you could bury it like Peeps did his cheese. Safe, waiting in the earth for karma, days. But the ground here is too hot, too crowded, too alive with terror. So you keep staggering, clutching bread, coins, bedding, and maybe the foolish hope that you guessed right about what would matter tomorrow. And tomorrow is still so far away. The bundle on your shoulder digs like a punishment, but you press forward because standing still feels like inviting the fire to catch you. London's streets, never wide even in daylight, have become strangling tunnels of panic. The houses lean toward each other as though whispering final confessions before they collapse. The roar of the fire behind you never lessens. It only deepens, like a drumbeat reminding you that every breath is borrowed. You push into a lane you barely recognize, eyes stinging from smoke, and realize escape will mean navigating not just the flames, but the press of humanity itself. You are not alone in this exodus. The alleys seethe with bodies. Neighbors, strangers, beggars, merchants, all jostling, shouting, stumbling forward. A donkey brays, hooves clattering as its owner lashes it toward the river. Chickens flap loose from a shattered coop, scattering into the mob, wings beating against soot-darkened faces. The chaos makes you laugh once, a sharp, wild bark that surprises even you. In another life, chickens in the street would be comedy. Tonight, they are obstacles that might trip you into the fire. The air itself feels weaponized. Smoke pours down, alleys, thick and choking. It slides into your nose, throat, and eyes until you can barely tell whether the tears streaming down your cheeks are grief or simply irritation. Someone nearby vomits from the fumes, retching onto the cobbles, then staggers on without even pausing. This is how survival works now. Nothing stops except bodies. The street tilts downward, leading toward Thames Street. The crowd surges like a tide, carrying you with it. You glimpse families clinging to each other, mothers hoisting infants above. The crush, fathers dragging carts until their arms tremble. One cart topples in the press, spilling pewter plates and brass candlesticks that scatter across the ground. Immediately hands snatch at them, not from greed but from habit. Metal is valuable, even in a burning city. Then someone screams that the fire is at their heels and the scavengers abandon their loot, running again. You keep your eyes on the narrow slit of night sky overhead. It glows orange, sparks drifting like malicious stars. Each time the wind gusts, a new volley of embers rains down, forcing you to duck. The roofs here are tinder. You can hear the crackle of them catching one after another. You realize with a shock that escape doesn't mean outrunning the fire in a straight line. It means zigzagging through a maze where each turn might already be ablaze. At a corner, the press halts abruptly. The lane ahead is clogged with carts and barrels abandoned in panic. People shove, curse, climb over the mess. You nearly lose your bundle in the chaos, clutching it tighter against your chest. Your throat aches from shouting when a path opens suddenly. A narrow gap between two wagons. You dive through, scraping your arms on splintered wood, and find yourself in another lane, this one strangely empty. The silence unnerves you. Only the fire speaks here, a constant rumble behind walls. You move quickly, footsteps echoing on cobbles slick with ash. Then you hear it, a keening wail, high and sharp. You turn and see a girl, maybe 10 years old, standing in a doorway with her hands pressed to her face. The house behind her glows with fire inside the walls. She does not move. For a moment you freeze, torn between running and helping. Then you lunge forward, seizing her arm, dragging her bodily from the threshold. She screams, claws at you, but when the doorway collapses in a sheet of sparks, she goes limp, stunned. You shove her into the crowd at the next junction, into the arms of someone who might be her mother, might be a stranger. It doesn't matter. You move on, because the fire doesn't pause for gratitude. You taste salt on your lips, tears, sweat, smoke. Your legs burn with exhaustion, lungs clawing for air. Every few steps you cough so hard it doubles you over. Around you, others collapse, some hauled upright by family, others trampled in the rush. You step over one, guilt stabbing at your chest, but survival doesn't allow ceremony. If you stop for everyone who falls, you'll fall too. Ahead, the lane widens into a small square. People are clustered here, arguing furiously. One group insists on heading north toward the city walls. Another says the river is closer. A third simply kneels in prayer, rocking back and forth, chanting hymns as sparks fall around them. You skirt the edge, unwilling to pause for debate. The fire doesn't care about strategies. It consumes equally. The ground shakes suddenly beneath your feet. An explosion rattles windows and the crowd screams. Somewhere close, a storehouse has gone up, tar, oil, or gunpowder. The blast sucks the air from your lungs, then pelts you with fragments of wood and slate. You duck, arms over your head, as glass shards whistle past. When you straighten again, half the square is aflame, the blast having carried fire farther than the wind could. Panic surges, and you are swept along again. As you run, you pass a church. Its bells toll furiously, though whether from hands or from heat cracking the metal, you cannot tell. People stream from its doors clutching chalices, icons, and holy books. One priest staggers out with a cross taller than himself, sweat running in rivulets down his face. He stumbles and nearly drops it, but two parishioners grab the wood, carrying it with him. Faith is heavy, you think, heavier than coins, but it's what they chose to pack. You stagger on, feet bleeding from glass and hot stones. Your bundle feels like it will tear your arms from their sockets. You envy those who abandoned everything, running free-handed. And yet, when you glance at the bread sticking out from your sack, you clutch it tighter. You will not starve if you survive the night. That thought keeps you moving. The fire is everywhere now. To your left, a row of houses collapses in a roar, sparks flying high enough to catch the spire of another church. To your right, an alley glows as though the sun rose there alone. The only path is forward, through streets you've never noticed before, twisted veins of the city now lit by destruction. You wonder, fleetingly, how long this can last. A fire this huge, surely it must run out of fuel. Historians still argue whether the wind or the city's layout doomed London most, but as you stumble through the smoke, it feels less like argument and more like inevitability. And inevitability is hungry. The crowd surges eastward, and suddenly you find yourself pressed against the river's edge, where the Thames should be calm, but instead churns with frantic life. Word has spread. Boats are the only salvation. And so Londoners swarm the water, stairs like bees to a hive, dragging their bundles, children, pets, and half their household goods down to the slick stones. The smell here is sharper, saltier, river mud stirred by thousands of feet, fish carcasses mixed with smoke. It's a stink that clings to your throat, even more than the fire does. The scene is madness. Bargemen shout until their voices crack, demanding coin before allowing passengers aboard. Some demand outrageous sums. 5 shillings for a place no wider than a plank. Families scream at them, waving purses, while others try to clamber on without paying. A man with a cudgel clubs back desperate hands, knocking one poor soul into the water. The splash is swallowed instantly by the roar of voices. the man's head bobbing once before disappearing beneath panicked oars. You watch in disbelief, then realize you're part of it. The bundle on your shoulder feels heavier here than anywhere, as if weighed down by greed and desperation all around you. You clutch it tighter, the coins inside now more dangerous than comforting. A bargeman shouts at you, "Pay or move!" And you back away, unable to meet his price. Behind you, the flames advance, reflected in the water like 1,000 writhing serpents. The fire seems eager to chase you onto the river itself. Children cry, their voices shrill over the din. One clings to a mother's skirts as she shoves a handful of coins into a bargeman's palm. He lets her aboard, but snarls when the child tries to follow, insisting on more money. She wails, reaching for him, but strangers shove between them. You can't watch anymore. You turn away, bile burning your throat. London is burning, and still men haggle like it's a marketplace. You move farther along the wharf, hoping for better fortune. Here, boats already sag with bodies, water sloshing dangerously near the gunwales. Some vessels are so crammed that passengers lean outward to balance the weight, eyes wide with terror that one sudden shift will tip them all. Barges creak, oars snap, curses fly. And yet people keep climbing aboard, because the land behind them is worse. You know it too. The choice is between drowning in the river or burning on the bank. Someone seizes your sleeve. It's an old neighbor, face blackened with soot, eyes watering. She begs you to help her lift a trunk into a boat. You shake your head, helpless. The trunk looks heavier than you, and the bargeman is already pushing her back with an oar. She curses him, spits in the water, and then staggers off, dragging the trunk alone. You never see her again. Above it all, the wind howls, carrying sparks. Across the river, yes, across, the impossible is happening. You watch in horror as flames leap from burning warehouses on the north bank to ignite thatched roofs on the opposite side. The Thames was supposed to be a barrier. Tonight, it feels like a wick. The press of the crowd grows unbearable. People shove you from all sides, everybody desperate to find space on water. You stumble, nearly losing your bundle. In that instant, you wonder if the bread and coins are worth more than your balance. You clutch tighter, because your mind can't accept letting go. It would feel like losing twice, your home and your hope. And then you see it, a small skiff, half hidden behind a larger barge, its owner shouting hoarsely for order. The boat is already low in the water, but you push toward it anyway, elbowing, through bodies. Just as you reach the edge, the skiff shoves off, oars biting the water. The owner shakes his head at you, eyes blank, and rows away. You watch helplessly as the boat glides into the fiery reflection of the Thames, carrying screams with it. You collapse onto the wet stones, gasping. Your chest heaves with exhaustion, your throat raw from smoke. For a moment, you think of surrender, just lying there until the fire arrives. The idea is almost peaceful, no more running, no more choking. But then a spark lands on your bundle, sizzling against the cloth. Instinct jerks you upright, batting it away. Survival refuses to let go, even when surrender tempts. Around you, others make their own grim choices. Some throw possessions into boats, lightening their loads just to gain passage. Others wade directly into the river, clutching planks or barrels, trying to float themselves across. A few succeed, vanishing into darkness. More sink, pulled under, by clothes too heavy, bundles too stubborn. You hear the splashes and the short, desperate cries, then only the roar of fire again. You stagger back from the water's edge. The boats are hopeless, the bargemen cruel. Perhaps the fields beyond the city will be safer. The crowd splits here, half toward boats, half toward gates leading out of London. You choose the latter, though your legs protest every step. The wharf, behind you, glows like a furnace. Barges silhouetted in flames, their passengers wailing as sparks rain down. You don't look back again. To look is to falter, and faltering means the fire wins. Still, you carry the smell of the river with you. Mud, smoke, panic, as you trudge onward. The Thames, once London's lifeline, is tonight only another stage for the great fire's theatre of survival, and you are still in the play. The river has failed you, and so has reason. You stumble back into the streets, clutching your bundle like it's the last anchor to your identity, and discover the next line of defense: soldiers with axes, firehooks, and powder kegs. Their orders echo down the alleys. Tear it down, pull it apart, make space. And suddenly the enemy is not just fire, but demolition itself. You watch as men swing iron hooks into the timbers of a house, prying boards loose while others hack at beams. The family inside screams, pleading for mercy, but the soldiers push them back. To save the city, the house must die. This is the tactic known as fire breaks, ripping down buildings ahead of the flames so the fire starves itself. In theory, it is logical. In practice, it looks like madness. Destroying homes to preserve homes, swinging axes while sparks rain overhead. You stand back as one wall gives way with a groan, collapsing into the street in a storm of plaster and smoke. The family sobs, clutching what little they carried out. One child clings to a wooden spoon, the only possession saved from the wreckage. Debate rages around you. Some citizens cheer the soldiers, insisting it's the only way to stop the blaze. Others curse them, shouting that their property is worth more than the city's plan. One man lunges at a soldier, fists raised, until he's knocked down with a musket butt. Blood trickles across the cobbles, mixing with ash. You realize with a chill that London is not only burning, it's also at war with itself. You edge closer to watch, and the scene sears itself into your mind. Powder kegs are rolled into basements, fuses lit with trembling hands. The blasts rip through buildings, sending shards into the night sky. You cover your ears, ducking as debris rains down. One soldier grins fiercely, shouting that fire can be beaten only by greater fire. Another curses under his breath, muttering that it's useless against this wind. Historians still argue whether the demolition efforts helped or hindered. But as you cough through the rubble, it feels like tearing at a mountain with spoons. The noise is relentless. Axes striking wood, kegs booming, families wailing, fire roaring. The demolition crews move like a tide, ripping one house after another, their faces blackened and grim. You catch a glimpse of a young soldier, no older than you, shaking as he lights a fuse. His lips move in prayer before he runs, and when the house explodes, the blast throws him flat on his back. You rush forward instinctively, helping him up, and his eyes meet yours for one breathless second. There is no thanks, no words. He staggers on, already lost in the next order. Around you, the fire presses closer. Every demolition buys only minutes. You see a row of houses pulled down in a desperate line, the rubble forming a barrier. But sparks leap it in seconds, igniting the next roof. The soldiers curse, their faces hollow with exhaustion. One throws his axe aside, muttering that God himself couldn't quench this. He's probably right. And yet, there is a strange rhythm here too. The crash of beams, the shouts of men, the roar of fire. It all blends into a grotesque orchestra. You feel yourself moving with it, staggering forward, dodging falling rubble, coughing until your ribs ache. At one point, a soldier thrusts a hook into your hands, barking at you to help. You yank at a beam, splinters biting your palms, until the wall groans and falls. The rush of smoke and sparks forces you back, choking, eyes streaming. For one absurd heartbeat, you feel like you're part of the fight. Then the fire eats the ruin anyway, and you remember you're only surviving, not saving. The demolitions ripple outward. Entire streets vanish in hours. Not from fire, but from axes and powder. Families drag what they can from the rubble. Chairs, pots, a bed frame. One man insists on carrying out a grandfather clock, its brass pendulum still swinging faintly. Another sobs over a broken spinning wheel, as though the wood itself were kin. It strikes you how much a home is more than walls. Its memories, smells, sounds. And tonight, all of them are being ripped apart, either by flame or by hands meant to defend. Through it all, the soldiers march grimly, their leather coats smeared with soot. their boots crunching glass and charred stone. They shout orders, drag reluctant families from doorways, and swing their hooks without pause. You hear one mutter that the Lord Mayor finally gave the command too late by days. Another spits, saying the king himself should stand here with powder in hand. Perhaps he will. Rumours already swirl of royal intervention. But rumours don't swing axes. Men do, and tonight they break the very city they were sworn to protect. The fire laughs at their effort. Each collapse sends sparks higher. Each blast feeds it more air. Still they fight, and still you run, weaving between rubble heaps and smouldering ruins. At one corner, you nearly stumble into an open pit where a house once stood. Flames lick, the edges casting eerie shadows. You scramble back, trembling. Survival has become a series of narrow escapes, each one owed less to wisdom than to luck. As you push onward, you can't help but wonder what will be left when the fire is done. A city of rubble, demolished by its own protectors, or nothing but ash, erased without a trace. The thought chills you even through the heat. You press your bundle tighter, cough until your lungs ache, and keep moving. London is tearing itself apart, and you are running through its bones. The night has turned into a furnace, but it's not only the flames that are suffocating London, it's the delay. You find yourself stumbling toward Cornhill, where rumours say the Lord Mayor himself has been called to give orders. People whisper, his name with equal parts anger and despair. Sir Thomas Bloodworth, a man more used to balancing accounts than balancing a city against disaster. You cling to the hope that authority will bring clarity, but the scene before you is anything but clear. The mayor stands near a cart, robes rumpled, face slick with sweat, his voice drowned by the roar of fire and the bellow of citizens demanding action. His eyes dart nervously to the flames, which lick higher with every gust. A watchman shouts that houses must be pulled down at once to stop the spread. The mayor waves his hand dismissively, muttering words that carry only a few feet, but will echo for centuries. A woman could piss it out. Whether he actually said it or not, historians still argue. But you can feel the paralysis in his hesitation. People howl at him, some begging, some cursing. Order the fire hooks. Call for powder. Save the city. He wrings his hands, shifting from foot to foot like a man asked to choose which of his children to abandon. His fear is not only of the fire, but of blame. If he orders homes destroyed, he risks lawsuits from angry property owners. If he does nothing, well, the city burns anyway. And so, hour after hour, London loses more ground to indecision. You stand there, choking on smoke, listening to the cacophony of voices. Some argue that demolition will save the streets. Others scream that it will destroy livelihoods, already trembling under plague and poverty. The mayor falters, caught between them, and you realize with a sick twist in your gut that leadership can be more dangerous than fire when it refuses to act. Around you, the fire advances. Cornhill's shops catch quickly, the mercer's silks, the draper's cloth, the barrels of oil stored for lamps. Each material adds its own note to the inferno. Silk shriveling with a hiss, cloth burning in thick black plumes, oil exploding into sudden fireballs that make people scatter in shrieking waves. The mayor stares, helpless, while the city he governs becomes an open kiln. A group of citizens seize fire hooks themselves, no longer waiting for orders. They hack at beams, dragging down walls with curses. One man shouts at the mayor, calling him a coward before disappearing into the smoke. The mayor winces, as though struck. You feel the same fury, anger that a city can be lost because one man fears a signature more than he fears flames, and yet there is pity too. He looks like any other frightened Londoner, overwhelmed by scale, choking on smoke, blinking through tears. Perhaps no human could command sense in this chaos. Perhaps any leader would stumble. Still, the fire does not stumble. It surges onward, fueled by hesitation. You press forward, leaving Cornhill behind, but the image clings, the mayor wringing his hands while the city turns to ash. Later, pamphlets will call for his disgrace, his name cursed in taverns. Even Pepys will mutter that. Bloodworth's weakness doomed London. But tonight, as you stumble through collapsing streets, you understand the deeper truth. One man's indecision magnified into a city's destruction. The fire leaps again, igniting Cheapside, the great artery of trade. You gag on the smell of burning spices, pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, once rare treasures now wasted into smoke. It makes your eyes sting, your throat seize. People cough and laugh bitterly, joking that London smells like a feast while its stomach empties. Humour again, desperate but necessary, a shield against despair. At one corner, you pause to catch your breath. A shop has collapsed, spilling molten lead into the street. It flows like silver snakes, hissing and spitting when it touches puddles. The heat is so intense, you can feel your skin tighten even standing yards away. You shiver despite the fire, not from cold, but from dread. Stone, lead, flesh, all of it melts before this hunger. You glance back once more, and the mayor is gone, swallowed by the tide of citizens and smoke. Perhaps he fled, perhaps he still dithers nearby. Either way, his moment has passed, and the city no longer waits for him. Decisions will be made by the fire itself. You shoulder your bundle again, legs trembling, lungs raw. You think, if leadership fails, then survival belongs only to those who move. And so you move, because the alternative is standing still, waiting for a command that may never come. The fire does not wait. Why should you? The night sky above London no longer looks like night. It is a cathedral of flame, a dome of red and orange that pulses with heat. You stumble onward, coughing until your chest aches, and then you hear a sound unlike any other so far. A deep groaning, a crack like thunder, and then a long, rolling roar that makes the very cobbles tremble beneath your feet. You stop, your bundle slipping against your hip, and turn toward the source. St. Paul's Cathedral, the pride of the city, the great stone fortress of faith is burning. You'd thought stone could not burn. Surely a church so vast, so solid would resist. But the roof is timber, the walls filled with scaffolding for renovations, and the library inside is heavy with books, manuscripts, sermons, parchments. Fire eats all of it with equal hunger. You can see sparks erupting from high windows, smoke venting through the bell towers. A wave of people gathers in the streets below, pointing, wailing, some even cheering in disbelief. And then the unimaginable happens. Molten lead begins to pour from the roof. It streams down in silver rivers, glowing like liquid stars, hissing as it hits the ground, pooling in deadly puddles that crack and spit. People scatter in terror, some tripping over bundles, others shrieking as the radiant heat singes their skin from yards away. The air hums with it, an oven's breath magnified 1,000-fold. You shield your face with your sleeve, but the heat still presses like a giant's hand, forcing you back. Inside, you know, are treasures, Bibles, relics, records of centuries. They are curling to ash even as you watch. You hear a crash, and one of the great beams falls, sending sparks skyward. The flames climb higher, devouring the scaffolding like a ladder to heaven. The bells, massive and proud, melt and tumble with a roar that shakes your bones. London's heart is collapsing, one stone at a time. People around you cry out. Some cross themselves, muttering prayers as though their words could hold the walls upright. Others curse the heavens, shouting that God has abandoned them. A few stand silent, faces blank, too numb to react. You feel all of it. Grief, awe, terror. St. Paul's was supposed to endure. If even it can crumble, what chance do you have? A man near you, soot-streaked and trembling, whispers, "This is the end of the world." You want to argue, but the molten lead raining from the sky silences you. The fire doesn't feel local anymore. It feels cosmic, as though London is a sacrifice offered to something greater. You stagger back as the dome itself glows, cracks, and finally caves inward. The noise is indescribable, a rolling avalanche of stone and flame. A shockwave of sparks bursts outward, showering the streets. You duck, coughing, your heart hammering. When you glance up again, the proud cathedral is a furnace, its silhouette broken, its glory erased. And yet, absurdly, life clings on around it. Families drag bundles down side streets, merchants shout about saving their goods, soldiers hack at nearby houses to slow the spread. A boy chases a goat through the smoke, laughing wildly as though unaware the city dies around him. Even in apocalypse, London refuses to hold still. You think of what St. Paul's meant, the skyline, the sermons, the symbol of resilience after plague and war. Now it is ash, and the city must decide what symbols will remain. Historians still argue whether its fall marked the lowest point of the fire or the moment London began to imagine rebuilding. Standing here, you only feel small, like an ant before a collapsing hive. The molten lead pools continue to hiss in the streets, glowing ominously as the cathedral burns behind you. You force yourself onward, away from the heat, away from the ruin, clutching your bundle like it can protect you from despair. You don't look back. You can't. To look back is to admit that nothing sacred survives flame. Your lungs ache, your legs tremble, but you keep moving. The fire has taken the city's greatest landmark. All that's left now is to see how much more it demands. And you already know. It will demand everything. The flames behind you crackle like a predator, gnawing on bones. But the streets ahead are no quieter. You stumble down Ludgate Hill, lungs rasping, when a new chaos takes form, not of collapsing cathedrals or soldiers with hooks, but of merchants, frantic and wild-eyed, clawing to save their wealth. If St. Paul's showed you what sacred faith looked like in ashes, here you see what commerce looks like under siege. Carts line the street, piled high with sacks, barrels, chests. Men shout hoarsely at oxen and horses to move faster, whips cracking in the smoky air. One wagon lurches under the weight of spices, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, their sweet aroma curling bitter in the heat. Another cart creaks with silver plate and pewter, clanging like church bells each time the wheel strikes a cobble. A third topples suddenly, its contents, silks and brocades, spilling onto the stones, immediately catching sparks and whooshing into flame. The merchant shrieks as though his very skin has ignited, beating at the cloth until others drag him away. You push into the mob, nearly knocked off your feet by a man hauling a chest bound in iron. His face is twisted with desperation, veins bulging in his neck as he staggers forward. "Help me!" he gasps, but no one does. His chest scrapes the cobbles, the weight slowing him fatally. Sparks leap onto his sleeves. You glimpse the sweat shining on his forehead, his eyes wide with terror. You want to help, but your own bundle digs into your shoulders. An instinct screams, not yours, not your weight. Within moments, he collapses, chest and man both swallowed in sparks. You wrench your gaze away, stomach twisting. Everywhere, possessions seem heavier than people. A woman drags a trunk by its handles, her child stumbling behind her, ignored as the trunk bumps and bounces. Another family rolls a barrel between them, shouting at others to clear the way. One man slashes with his knife at anyone who reaches for his load, snarling like a cornered animal. It is greed, yes, but also desperation. Wealth is survival in the days to come, if only they can carry it past the fire. But the fire has no respect for gold or spice. You see a warehouse burst into flames, the roof blowing apart in a rush of sparks. Barrels inside explode, scattering flaming pitch across the street. Horses rear, scream, and bolt, their carts overturning. A merchant wails as his goods vanish in a storm of embers. He drops to his knees, clawing at the burning remains, until someone drags him away by force. The smell here is nauseating. Burning sugar, tar, hemp, oil. The air itself feels sticky, choking your lungs. You cough until you retch, doubling over, but there is no clean air anywhere, only layers of smoke, sweet and bitter, sharp and foul. Your body feels coated in it, as though the fire is not just outside but inside you too. And still, absurdly, there are jokes. A man runs past carrying nothing but a roast goose, shrieking that at least he won't go hungry. Another merchant, face black with soot, laughs hysterically as his silks burn, shouting that London will at last be fashionable in flame. You laugh once yourself, a short, bitter bark, because the alternative is weeping. The merchants who do escape drag their loads toward the fields beyond the city. You glimpse one group burying goods hastily under a hedge, shoveling dirt over barrels of wine as though the fire won't find them underground. It reminds you of Pepys's Parmesan cheese, buried in a pit. What treasures survive the fire will be odd, random. Cheese, wine, spoons, a parrot cage. Because people save what they can, not what makes sense. The crowd surges again, pressing you along. At one crossing, you see a man slashing his own cart, ropes, tossing goods aside to lighten the load. Silver clatters onto the cobbles, ignored as sparks fall around it. Children scramble for trinkets, their parents dragging them back. The man curses, then runs, his cart finally moving again. The street glitters briefly with abandoned wealth, then disappears into smoke. You stumble onward, bundles still clutched to your chest. Your bread is crushed flat, your coins clinking dully. They feel meaningless, absurd compared to the chaos around you, but you can't let them go. Possessions, after all, are not just objects. They are identity, memory, hope. To drop them would be to admit that fire has stripped you bare, and you are not ready for that. The fire, however, doesn't ask permission. It crashes forward, roaring louder with every gust. The merchants curse, wail, scramble, and vanish into its glow. Some succeed, their carts rattling toward the gates. Many do not. You keep moving, your eyes stinging, your legs trembling, your mind echoing with one thought. London is burning, and wealth is burning with it. And you are still here, alive, though you don't yet know if survival is victory or simply delay. The streets churn with smoke and ruin, and yet, in the middle of it all, the worst pain isn't the fire itself. It's the tearing apart of families. You stagger into a square where the crowd presses so tightly that the air seems squeezed from your lungs. It isn't just goods being dropped, spilled, and abandoned here. It's people. You hear the cries before you see them. Desperate voices calling out names, shrill and hoarse, echoing into the choking air. William. Mother. Mary. Where are you? Children scream as they are yanked this way and that, their small hands slipping from larger ones in the crush. A boy of about 7 bursts past you, his face streaked black, his eyes wide with terror. He shouts for his father until the press of the crowd swallows him. You reach out instinctively, but he vanishes into the smoke before your fingers touch. You hear his voice a moment longer, then nothing. A woman stumbles against you, sobbing, clutching an infant so tightly the baby wheezes. Her other child, perhaps 4 years old, is dragged behind her by the wrist, stumbling, coughing, crying. The woman pushes through the crowd, frantic, muttering prayers between each breath. She doesn't even glance at you, but the sheer force of her terror clings to you like soot. You wonder whether she'll manage to hold on to both children. You wonder what happens if she doesn't. At one crossing, chaos surges into violence. 2 men shout over the possession of a small cart, each insisting his family needs it more. Their voices rise into roars, fists fly, and one is shoved into the gutter. His wife screams as her husband disappears beneath stamping feet. She tries to drag him out, but the fire chooses that moment to leap closer, and the crowd surges again. She's pulled away, sobbing, leaving him behind. This is survival's cruelest face, not just escaping flames, but watching as bonds unravel under pressure. Later, historians will write about the architecture, the weather, the politics. They will measure loss in houses, in churches, in pounds, sterling. But here, in the smoke, loss is measured in names screamed into the night, unanswered. The elderly suffer most. You pass an old man sitting on a stoop, cane across his knees, staring blankly at the glowing horizon. His family is gone, or perhaps he has none. He coughs once, twice, but doesn't rise. People stream past him, too hurried to notice, too frantic to help. He looks strangely peaceful, as though he has already chosen to let the fire do its work. You want to stop, to pull him up, but the press of bodies sweeps you onward. His stillness lingers behind you like a shadow. Pets, too, add to the heartbreak. Dogs howl, straining against ropes, dragged unwillingly by owners. Cats streak through alleys, their fur singed, their cries eerie in the smoke. You nearly trip over a cage of birds abandoned in the street, the creatures fluttering frantically as sparks rain down. Some people scoop their animals into their arms. Others let them go. Choices made in seconds, scars that will last lifetimes. You feel the crowd break apart around you, pulled in different directions by fire and fear. You hear one man shouting that the fields beyond the walls are safe. Another insists the boats still take passengers. A third mutters darkly about foreigners setting the blaze. Rumors ripple like wind, each one pushing families apart as decisions splinter. And in those splinters, loved ones vanish. The sounds are unbearable, coughing, screaming, sobbing, the wordless wails of grief. You press your bundle to your chest, but it feels meaningless compared to the sound of a mother shrieking for her child. You spot her darting through the crowd, clutching a ragged doll in one hand, her other hand empty. She searches faces, peering into smoke, calling until her voice cracks. You want to help, but there are 100 such voices around you, each as desperate as hers. You stagger onward, haunted by the echoes. You realize that in the fire's story, objects are consumed, buildings erased, but people are torn, apart, not always by flame, but by chaos. That's the cruelty no monument records. Still, you keep moving. You tell yourself you'll survive, though survival feels less like triumph now and more like guilt. Because every step forward means leaving someone behind. You stumble onward, past the weeping voices and scattered children, until the air thins and the ground beneath your feet turns softer. The walls of London fall away behind you, or what remains of them, and suddenly the noise shifts. The roar of flames becomes muffled, though not absent, and the clang of bells gives way to the muffled chorus of thousands gathering in open fields. It is here, beyond the city walls, that the survivors are spilling like ants fleeing a burning nest. The fields of Moorfields and Finsbury, usually places of grazing cattle or idle play, are now choked with tents, blankets, wagons, and bodies, huddled under the night sky. You step into the mass and feel the odd stillness of it, compared to the chaos you left behind. The fire's glow still paints the horizon an angry red, but here, for the first time, you can breathe without choking on every gulp of air. The relief is sharp, painful even. Your chest seizes in a fit of coughing, but the air feels cleaner, cooler, touched only lightly by drifting ash. Around you, Londoners are remaking the city in miniature, improvising homes in open fields. Families cluster around hastily pitched shelters, blankets strung between cartwheels, sails stolen from riverboats pegged into the soil, timber frames thrown together with frantic hands. The earth itself is scarred by shovels where people dig pits to bury goods, hoping to return when the fire has passed. Here a man buries a sack of coins. There a woman crouches over a chest, muttering that no one must touch her linens. Every shovel of dirt feels like an act of superstition. Hide it from the fire, hide it from thieves, hide it from despair. The sounds of the field are no less haunting. Children whimper, exhausted and frightened, while mothers hush them with trembling. Voices, men curse, voices low, arguing over stolen space or stolen food. Dogs bark endlessly, sensing their master's panic, adding sharp notes to the night's chorus. And always the background hum, the fire's distant roar, the city itself groaning as timbers fall and towers collapse. Even outside the walls, London, refuses to be silent. You stagger to a patch of ground where others sit in a loose circle. They glance at you, faces hollow and streaked with soot, before returning their gaze to the fire-glow horizon. You sink down beside them, laying your bundle. At your feet, for a moment you simply sit, your lungs aching, your arms trembling from the weight of carrying both goods and fear. Then the questions creep in. What now? Some answer it aloud. A man mutters that the king will send soldiers to quench the fire. Another insists it will burn until nothing remains. A woman whispers prayers in Latin, rocking back and forth. The children watch silently, wide-eyed, clutching toys or scraps of bread as though they were relics. No one really knows what comes next. Hunger gnaws at you before long. You break the crushed loaf from your bundle and chew, the dry crumbs sticking to your tongue. Others around you do the same, trading bites of cheese, apples, smoked fish, a few light small fires, ironic in this landscape of flames, to warm hands or cook what food they've salvaged. The smoke from these little campfires mixes with the greater smoke drifting from London, until it seems the whole world breathes ash. And yet, in the midst of despair, strange moments of humanity shine. A woman tears a strip of her blanket to wrap a stranger's burned hand. A boy shares a handful of berries with another child he's never met. An old man tells a joke, voice cracking but earnest, about how London will finally get fresh air once the stench of fishmongers is gone. The group chuckles, weary but grateful, and you feel the laughter loosen something knotted in your chest. Even in ruin, humor insists on surviving. Still, the night stretches long. The fields grow colder as the hours pass, and many huddle closer together. You curl around your bundle, its hard edges digging into your ribs, but you can't let it go. Possession still means something, even out here, even under the indifferent stars. Sleep comes only in fragments, broken by coughs, cries, and the distant thunder of collapsing walls. Each time your eyes close, you dream of fire creeping across the grass, of flames leaping the very walls you fled. When dawn comes, it does not feel like rescue. The sky glows red long before the sun rises, stained by the reflection of flames still devouring the city. The air smells of char and ruin, carried on a breeze that tastes of smoke, even miles from the burning core. Around you, people rise stiffly, brushing dirt from their clothes, peering anxiously toward the city. Some weep at the sight of smoke towers rising where their homes once stood. Others fall into silence, too numb to react. You wander the camp, seeing how others endure. Some have set up little markets already, bartering bread for blankets, coins for water. A man with a cart sells roasted chestnuts, though where he found them in the chaos you cannot guess. Another sharp-eyed fellow offers space under a canvas for a price. Even here, even in ruin, London's instinct for trade refuses to die. But hunger is sharper than coin. You see children licking crumbs from cloth, mothers rationing tiny portions, men gnawing at strips of dried meat like dogs with bones. Thirst presses too. The wells near the fields are shallow, the water muddy. People queue anyway, desperate for a mouthful. Some gather dew from cloths laid in the grass, squeezing drops into their mouths. Survival turns every act into ingenuity. As the day drags on, more refugees pour in. The fields swell with bodies until it feels like another city, this one built from ash and sorrow. Rumours ripple through the crowd. The Tower of London might explode from stored gunpowder. The king himself is coming. Foreigners are poisoning wells. Fear spreads faster than bread. You overhear an argument break into blows, two men rolling in the dirt until others drag them apart. Desperation sharpens into suspicion. Still, when night falls again, you feel the tiniest pulse of safety. The fire is still visible on the horizon, a great wall of red light, but here in the open, you are not yet swallowed. The ground beneath you is rough, the air bitter with smoke, but it is not flame. That difference alone is enough to rest your head, if only for a few hours. And as you drift into uneasy sleep, you realize survival is no longer about saving possessions or even homes. It is about enduring in the open, under stars dimmed by smoke, waiting for the city's fire to either burn itself out or consume the world entire. The fields are crowded beyond imagining. By the second morning, the open meadows outside London have transformed into a patchwork of desperation. Tents stitched from blankets, lean-tos built from wagon boards, holes dug into the earth to hide both people and possessions. You awaken with a crick in your neck, your mouth dry, your body still trembling from smoke that clings to your chest. The horizon glows the same angry red as yesterday, proof that the city still burns unchecked. You blink through swollen eyes and understand the fire isn't stopping. Not yet. The first pang you feel isn't fear anymore, but hunger. The bread you saved is nearly gone, and each bite seems to vanish before you've even swallowed. Around you, others gnaw at scraps, rationing dried meat, stale cakes, whatever was dragged from kitchens before flight. Children chew leather straps, softening them in water to trick their bellies. You watch one boy break his biscuit into 4 tiny pieces, eating them one at a time with solemn patience, as if lengthening the ritual might lengthen life itself. Water proves the sharper pain. Wells near the fields are few and shallow, and by mid-morning the queues stretch long. People mutter, argue, shove. Buckets return muddy, fouled with ash. Some drink anyway, gagging, while others wait longer for clearer drops. You see one woman wring dew from her shawl into a child's mouth. Another man dips his hat into a ditch where horses drank the night before. The fire may have spared you, but thirst whispers that it can finish the job. Small thefts begin, quiet at first. A man sneaks an apple from a basket left too near. A child slips bread from another's hand, running before the cry goes up. At first, the crowd hisses disapproval, but as hours pass, the hiss weakens. Hunger erodes outrage. Soon, everyone eyes each other's bundles with suspicion, measuring survival against morality. You clutch your own bundle tighter. The coins inside feel heavier now, though less useful. Merchants here demand triple prices for crumbs. A roasted chestnut costs more than a day's wage. You hear one man curse, saying the fire burns gold itself. What good is wealth if you can't eat it? And yet he still pays, because hunger has no patience for principle. Even in the fields, Londoners try to rebuild routine. A cluster of women gather to cook thin broth over a smoky fire, pooling carrots and onions pulled from gardens. Men form crude watch groups, patrolling the edges of camp against imagined thieves. A preacher climbs a cart and bellows about God's wrath, warning that sin brought this flame. Some cheer, others groan, and a few hurl stones until he flees. Historians still argue whether religion soothed or sharpened fear in these nights, but you hear both in equal measure. Psalms sung softly by families, curses shouted against heaven. By evening, the hunger grows crueler. Children cry constantly, their voices fraying into hoarse sobs. Mothers hush them with empty hands, rocking, murmuring lies about food on the way. Men gnash their teeth, pacing, snapping at each other over crumbs. A fight erupts near you when one man accuses another of stealing a sausage. They tumble in the dirt, fists and curses flying, until others pry them apart. The sausage lies forgotten, trampled flat into the mud. Amidst the misery, there are still absurdities. You overhear 2 men arguing whether smoked eels keep longer than salted beef. Their debate so earnest, it nearly makes you laugh. Another fellow insists he will return to the city to fetch his wine cellar, as though the fire might pause politely while he chooses bottles. Someone jokes that London is now the world's largest oven, and soon the fields will smell of roasted citizens. The laugh that follows is ragged, desperate, but real. Humour clings even here, brittle as ash, but stubborn. Night falls heavy. The fire still glows, a wall of red that paints faces in eerie light. The camp sinks into uneasy silence, broken only by coughs and whimpers. You curl around your bundle again, stomach hollow, tongue dry. Sleep drags at your eyes, but fear keeps them open. You dream half awake of fountains spilling clean water, of loaves of bread piled high, of wine poured into silver cups. When you blink, you find only mud and smoke. By dawn, the hunger sharpens further. Some venture back toward the city, scavenging half-burned stores. They return with blackened bread, scorched meat, casks cracked and leaking. The camp descends on them, tearing food apart, eating with hands blackened by soot. You join in, chewing bitter crust, gagging but swallowing. Anything is better than nothing. And still, the fire burns. And still, the fields swell with survivors. And still, the gnawing inside you reminds you that fire isn't the only killer. Hunger and thirst are slower, but just as sure. You close your eyes, clutching your bundle, whispering to yourself that you will last the night, and then the next. And then perhaps, long enough to see London's smoke fade into sky. The fields groan with weary voices. But then a new sound arrives. Not the crackle of fire, nor the sob of hungry children, but the sharp rhythm of marching boots. Word spreads quickly through the camp. The king has sent soldiers. You lift your head, eyes red from smoke, and see the line of men pushing through the crowd. Their breastplates dull with soot, their coats spattered with ash. They carry axes, powder, and the authority of a crown that has finally decided hesitation is more dangerous than cost. The mood shifts. Some cheer, shouting that salvation has come at last. Others mutter darkly that soldiers will protect only. The rich tearing down poor men's houses while saving merchant vaults. Whispers ripple. Will Charles II himself appear? Some claim he already walked the city with his brother, the Duke of York, urging citizens to act. Others scoff, saying the king hides behind walls while his subjects choke. Historians still argue how present Charles truly was, but here in the fields, rumour is fact enough. You push closer to see. The soldiers set about their grim work with speed the watchmen never had. They force families from homes, swinging axes into beams, planting powder at foundations. The blasts echo like thunder, scattering sparks into the smoky air. Houses collapse in heaps of rubble before the fire can touch them, creating empty scars where once stood rows of timber. The crowd gasps at the violence of it, half horrified, half relieved. You glimpse a soldier dragging a woman from her doorway as she clings to the frame, screaming about her dowry chest inside. He shoves her into the street, mutters an apology, and then lights the fuse. The explosion flings splinters across the cobbles. The woman wails, but the soldier marches on. You wonder how many apologies he can carry before his heart buckles. The king's orders ripple outward. Demolish what must be demolished. Slow the fire at any cost. Finally, authority speaks with clarity, and though the flames still rage, you sense a shift. The chaos of indecision has hardened into strategy, brutal though it is. The fields hum with debate. Some insist Charles is saving the city, others claim he is destroying it with his own hand. You think of the mayor's hesitation, of the king's belated resolve, and wonder whether leadership always arrives only when ruin has already taken root. By afternoon, the Duke of York himself rides, near the fire lines, soot streaking his cheeks, his voice carrying over the din. He calls citizens to aid the soldiers, urges calm, steadies nerves. Some obey, emboldened by his presence. Others curse him under their breath, calling it theatre. You stand among them, bundle still clutched, wondering which truth is sharper, that authority can inspire, or that it can arrive too late. Still, the work continues. Rows of houses vanish, replaced by jagged piles of debris. The fire snarls, leaps, but sometimes falters when denied its fuel. For the first time in days, you glimpse flames dying at the edge of a demolished block. The crowd cheers wildly, voices hoarse but triumphant. It feels like watching a beast stumble, if only for a moment, yet victory tastes thin. You know the city is already gutted, its heart consumed. Even if the flames are stopped tomorrow, London as you knew it is gone. And, still, the fire has not yet finished. Sparks leap to new districts, and the wind carries its hunger on. As evening falls, soldiers march back to the fields, their faces hollow with exhaustion. Some slump to the ground, gulping water, others sharpen axes with trembling hands. They look as broken as the refugees, yet they march still, called by orders harsher than hunger. You watch them, caught between admiration and pity. These men destroy homes to save streets, and in doing so, carry a burden no one will thank them for. The camp hums with fresh arguments. Some claim the king's presence proves the city will rise again. Others insist the crown cares only for monuments and trade, not for families huddled in mud, hope and bitterness braid together, neither strong enough to choke the other. Night comes again, and the fire still glows, though the lines of demolition now carve jagged wounds across the city's face. You curl into your blanket, coins pressing into your ribs, and wonder if tomorrow will bring ash or reprieve. The king has spoken, the soldiers act, and still the flames laugh. You close your eyes, whispering that maybe leadership, though late, will be enough. But even as you drift, the horizon burns red, and the fire's voice whispers back, "Not yet." The fire's roar is no longer the only terror stalking the streets. By now, fear has grown a second head. Rumor. In the fields and the ruins alike, whispers twist into certainty, and certainty erupts into violence. You hear it first in passing, a man hissing to his wife that the French did this, that papists lit the flames in vengeance. Another swears he saw strangers with fireballs hidden in their cloaks. Soon, the stories multiply like sparks on the wind. You weave through the crowd, listening. Each tale contradicts the last, yet all are believed. A sailor insists that Dutch agents, furious at the recent wars, set the blaze with brimstone. A beggar mutters that Jesuits crept into London at night, striking matches in secret corners. Someone else claims demons dance through the alleys, fanning the flames with wings. No proof, no logic, just voices carried by panic. And panic is faster than fire. The mob begins to shift. Suspicion sharpens into accusation. You see it when a foreigner, his accent thick, stumbles into the square. People surround him instantly, shouting, demanding to know if he carries combustibles. He raises his hands, protesting, but a stone flies from the crowd, striking his cheek. Blood spatters the dirt. The crowd surges, fists and boots raining down. You flinch, turning away, but the sound lingers. Bone against cobble, curses against screams. When it ends, silence hangs heavy for a moment before someone mutters that justice has been done. Justice, born of rumor and smoke. Children hear these whispers too, parroting them as truth. You pass a boy who shouts proudly that he saw a Spaniard toss fire into a stable. His mother hushes him, but others nod grimly. You wonder if the boy invented it or merely repeated what he overheard. It doesn't matter. In panic, imagination becomes history. The paranoia spreads to the camp. Families clutch their bundles tighter, glaring at strangers, asking names and origins. A woman refuses bread from a man with a foreign look, hissing that he might have poisoned it. A preacher thunders that God is punishing London for harboring outsiders. Another preacher counters that God punishes only sin, not nationality. The two nearly come to blows, and their flocks divide along the fault line of rumor. You recall the plague year, when foreigners were accused of carrying pestilence in their very breath. Now the fire plays the same game, turning suspicion into survival strategy. Historians still argue whether the rumors were seeded by fear alone or fanned deliberately by leaders who needed scapegoats. But standing here, soot stinging your eyes, you know only that rumor spreads as greedily as flame. One night, you watch a mob storm a makeshift shelter. Inside, a family huddles, their accents strange. The mob drags them out, shouting that they carry firebombs. Buckets are overturned, bedding ripped apart. Nothing is found, of course, But the family is beaten anyway, their cries blending with the fire's crackle in the distance. You stand frozen, guilt clawing at your ribs. You want to intervene, but the mob is vast, and you are one. Survival whispers, stay silent. And yet, not all succumb. You see acts of defiance too. Neighbors shielding strangers, soldiers dispersing mobs with musket butts, priests shouting for calm. One man pulls a bleeding foreigner into his tent, tending his wounds despite angry stares. Courage flickers like embers in ash, fragile but real. Still, the paranoia lingers. Every creak in the night makes heads snap around. Every cough is suspicion. Every stranger is danger. You clutch your bundle closer, though you know fire doesn't care about accents or origins. It burns all equally. But the crowd does not understand equality tonight. Fear has rewritten the city's map. Now, borders are drawn not by streets or parishes, but by rumor, and crossing those invisible lines can be as deadly as flame. You lie awake in the field, stomach aching with hunger, ears ringing with shouts that echo long after silence. The fire still glows on the horizon, but another fire smolders in the camp. The fire of suspicion, of blame. You realize with a shiver that this second fire may not die when the flames do. It may smolder for years, etched into memory and story, long after the ashes cool. And still, you clutch your bread, your coins, your blanket, whispering to yourself that survival is enough. For now, by the time the third day dawns, the sky above London has turned a dull grey-brown, as though the heavens themselves have been painted with soot. The flames, once a furious wall, now appear in pockets, roofs still blazing, warehouses still collapsing. But the wind has shifted and whispers pass among the refugees. The fire is slowing. You blink through swollen, gritty eyes, and for the first time since it began, you notice silence creeping between the crackles. It is not peace, it is exhaustion. You gather yourself and wander back toward the edge of the city. Others do the same, pulled by a grim magnetism, unable to resist seeing what remains. The streets you step onto are no longer streets, but tunnels of ruin. Blackened timbers lean against one another like drunkards. Roof tiles crunch underfoot. Fused into glassy shards by the heat, ash drifts down with every gust, coating your hair, your skin, your bundle. It is snow from a nightmare, soft but bitter. Everywhere, smoke still curls from foundations. Here and there, walls stand without roofs, jagged silhouettes against the pale sky. You see one man climbing over rubble, calling softly for his wife, though the house he searches is nothing but char. Another kneels in front of a collapsed shop, sifting through ash with bare hands until his skin blisters. A woman nearby gathers nails from the debris, dropping them into a sack, already planning for rebuilding. Grief and practicality live side by side here, as inseparable as smoke and fire. The air is hot, but heavy with silence. The roaring beast of flame has weakened into smouldering breath. You tread cautiously, every step echoing strangely in the absence of life. No horses, no church. Bells, no market cries, only the creak of collapsing beams and the hiss of steam where water buckets were flung too late. You realize with a start how loud London used to be, how the silence now feels like accusation. In one ruined lane, you stumble upon a group of neighbors standing together, their faces blank, their eyes on the black skeleton of their parish church. The steeple has fallen, its stones scattered like children's toys. One man whispers that God's house has burned because God is angry. Another insists it burned because the roof was old. Neither convinces the other, and both fall into silence. Again. You stand with them a while, gazing at the charred remains, and feel the strange fellowship of shared loss. Still, danger lingers. Now it is not flames leaping house to house, but smouldering embers, sudden collapses, hidden pits. You nearly fall when a beam gives way beneath your foot, plunging you knee-deep into ash that scorches your leg. You scramble free, heart racing, and limp onward, knowing others will not be so lucky. Survival doesn't end when the flames fade. It demands vigilance even in silence. You pass a warehouse still smoking, its contents unrecognizable heaps of blackened lumps. A man picks through them, pulling out melted lumps of pewter, smiling grimly as if he struck treasure. Another drags away scorched barrels, coughing but triumphant. To some, even ruins are riches. You wonder what you will salvage from your own street, if you dare return. The silence grows heavier as you near St. Paul's again. Its carcass looms like a mountain of ruin, the lead cooled into dull rivers across the stones. The smell here is acrid, bitter enough to sting your throat anew. People stand in clusters, staring at the wreckage as though waiting for it to rise again. But nothing stirs. Even the pigeons are gone, their nests long since turned to cinders. For the first time, you let yourself breathe deeply. The smoke is thinner now, the air less choking. You realize you are not running anymore. You are walking, slowly, carefully, through the wreck of what was once your world. The fire is no longer hunting you. It is dying, though in its death it has already remade everything. You close your eyes for a moment and hear the echo of what once was. Market cries, bells, laughter spilling from taverns, church choirs on Sundays. When you open them, you see only ruin. Survival feels hollow in the face of such silence. And yet, you are still breathing, still moving. That, you tell yourself, must be enough. The fire has not vanished entirely. It smoulders in pockets, waiting to flare if fed. But the great roar is gone, replaced by the hiss of cooling ash. The beast has finally grown tired, and in the pause it leaves, you understand. The hardest part is not surviving the fire. It is surviving what comes after. When you finally gather the courage to return toward your own street, your legs tremble not from the heat, but from dread. The smoke has thinned enough that shapes emerge, shapes that once were houses, shops, taverns. You step carefully, each footfall crunching on brittle ash, until you realize with a cold jolt that you are walking through what used to be your neighborhood. Familiar streets now look like a black and white sketch, rubbed out by careless hands. You pause at a corner where a tavern once stood. You remember its raucous laughter, the clink of mugs, the smell of ale soaking into wooden floors. Now it is only a pile of stones and char, the air faintly sour with burnt hops. The signboard, which once swung above the door, lies warped on the ground, its painted image blistered beyond recognition. You kneel and touch the wood. It crumbles to powder beneath your fingers. Memory is softer than ash. As you turn onto your own lane, your breath catches. Where your house stood, only blackened earth and a twisted skeleton of beams remain. You had imagined finding a wall still standing, a doorway, something to prove your life once occupied this space. Instead, there is nothing but fragments. The bent iron of a cooking pot, the melted shape of a spoon, the outline of your bed's frame fused to the ground. Your bundle slips from your shoulder as your knees give way. You press your palms into the ash, hot even now, and feel the last thread of hope unravel. Others pick through their ruins nearby. A woman shrieks with joy at finding a silver candlestick intact, clutching it like a holy relic. A man digs furiously through rubble until he pulls free a scorched Bible, holding it aloft with tears streaming down his cheeks. A boy collects nails in his cap, smiling as if they were gold. Around you, the survivors scavenge, every find a treasure, every treasure proof that the fire did not erase them entirely. You search too, fingers trembling, heart pounding. You scrape at the ash until your nails crack, until soot coats your arms up to the elbows. At last, you find a small object, your mother's brooch, blackened but whole. You clutch it until your hands shake, tears spilling silently down your cheeks. In that moment, survival shifts. It is no longer about running from fire, but about proving you still exist in its wake. The silence here is heavy, broken only by coughing and the occasional wail when someone uncovers a burned corpse. Even in ruin, death clings. You turn away when you see a family kneeling around the charred shape of what was once their father, their sobs muffled by smoke. You cannot bear it, not now. Your eyes drift toward the river. Barges float with scavengers now, not refugees. Men fish charred timbers from the water, binding them for resale. Women wash clothes in the Thames, its surface scummed with ash and soot. Even destruction becomes commerce. You wonder bitterly if Londoners could sell fire itself, they would. Still, the ruin has strange beauty. The skyline is jagged, surreal. Chimneys standing like gravestones, spires cut in half, walls leaning precariously. Ash drifts in the air, glowing faintly in the sun like snow that forgot how to be clean. You pause, oddly mesmerized, until the stink of burnt flesh jerks you back to reality. Neighbors gather in small knots, comparing losses, retelling the story of the fire, as though speaking it aloud might make sense of it. You hear the same phrases, repeated. It came so fast. The wind carried it. We barely escaped. Already, memory is hardening into legend, grief into narrative. Perhaps this is how people endure, by turning terror into story. You lift your bundle again, heavier than ever now, though the bread is nearly gone, the coins meaningless among ruin. You clutch the brooch in your palm, pressing its scorched metal into your skin until it hurts. Proof you lived here. Proof. The fire did not erase everything. As you walk from the ruins, you glance back one last time at the street that raised you, played with you, sheltered you. It is silent now, except for the soft hiss of smoke. You whisper a goodbye, though. You don't know if the words are for the house or for the self that lived inside it. And then you step forward, because survival insists on forward, always forward. The fields swell with more refugees every day, and what began as scattered families on patches of grass has turned into a sprawling encampment. Canvas, sails, wagon boards and sheets strung on poles form a makeshift city. London, reborn in rags and timber. You trudge back into this sea of desperation after scavenging your street, the brooch still clutched in your fist, soot ground into your palms. Around you, the murmur of survival hums louder than prayer, louder even than grief. Everywhere, shelters rise. Some are little more than blankets thrown over ropes, sagging in the night wind. Others are elaborate, walls built from wagon sides, roofs patched with tar cloth, even chimneys rigged from broken barrels. Families huddle inside, cooking thin broth over smoky fires, their eyes darting at every stranger who passes. The ground is scarred with shallow pits, where goods have been buried, marked with stones or branches. Secret caches meant to outlast the hunger and the thieves. You step carefully, aware that every patch of earth here belongs to someone now. The air is thick with human need. Smoke from campfires drifts low, mixing with the acrid tang of the city's ruin. Children cry, their voices hoarse. Mothers scold or soothe, their faces hollow. Men pace like caged animals, snapping at each other over scraps of space or food. Dogs bark endlessly, their ribs sharp beneath patchy fur, scavenging whatever crumbs fall. Even the birds circle overhead cautiously, their wings coated in grey dust. Markets spring up amid the chaos. Merchants who fled with carts now sell their goods at grotesque prices. Bread for a crown, a cup of ale for more than a man's day's wage. You watch in disbelief as coins clink into their hands, hunger forcing people to pay. A woman offers a ragged shawl in exchange for a heel of cheese. A boy barters nails scavenged from ruins for a spoonful of porridge. Commerce has survived the fire more swiftly than faith. You clutch your own coins, hesitating. The bread in your bundle is nearly gone. Your stomach gnaws constantly. but you cannot bring yourself to hand over silver for crumbs. You linger by a stall until the merchant glares, snapping, "Pay or move!" You move, shame heating your cheeks. Pride is thin comfort against hunger. As night falls, the camp flickers with dozens of small fires. Shadows huddle around them, faces half lit, eyes reflecting flame. You hear fragments of conversation, stories of escape, of what was lost, of who is to blame. One man swears he saw Frenchmen tossing fireballs. Another insists the king himself set the blaze to rebuild the city. A woman mutters that London deserved it for its sins. Historians will argue for centuries, but tonight, rumor is as real as hunger. You wander through the camp, your ears catching the strange music of survival. Someone hums a lullaby, cracked but steady. Children chant rhymes to distract themselves from growling bellies. Men laugh bitterly at jokes about roasted rats. You even chuckle once, though the sound feels foreign in your mouth. Humor clings, like moss, stubborn even in fire's shadow. Sleep is harder. The ground is cold, the air sharp with smoke. Every cough echoes. Every creak of canvas feels like intrusion. You curl around your bundle, the brooch pressing into your palm, coins digging into your ribs. You dream of water, of bread, of your street alive again. When you wake, your cheeks are wet, though whether from sweat, tears, or dew, you cannot tell. Morning brings fresh quarrels. Neighbors argue over boundaries marked by sticks. A fight breaks out at the well, men grappling until others drag them apart. A woman screams that her buried chest has been stolen. Suspicion sharpens the camp like a knife, each glance edged with doubt. And yet, alongside it, kindness flickers. A stranger shares bread with an orphan. A group of men raise a stronger tent for an old widow. A girl braids flowers into her mother's soot-streaked hair. Even here, beauty insists on surviving. You realize that London is rebuilding itself already, not in brick or stone, but in these shabby huts, these bartered goods, these fragile alliances. The fire erased walls, but it did not erase the human instinct to live, to gather, to hope. As you sit by a smoky fire that evening, gnawing the last of your bread, you lift your eyes to the horizon. The city still smoulders, glowing faintly against the sky. But here in the fields, another city glows too, one of rags, ash, and stubborn breath. You whisper to yourself that you will endure. You must, because London, even in ruins, refuses to die. By the fourth day, survival begins to look less like flight and more like barter. Hunger claws at every belly. Thirst dries every tongue. And those who once held coins like treasures now clutch them in frustration. You wander through the camp, bundles slung over your shoulder, and realize that markets, of a sort, are everywhere. London's instinct to trade refuses to perish, even when the city itself is ash. Stalls are crude, planks across barrels, blankets spread on the ground, baskets tipped over with contents displayed. One merchant sells scorched biscuits, blackened on one side but edible if you scrape them with a knife. Another hawks salted fish, its stench overwhelming even the smoke-soured air. A woman offers ribbons salvaged from her shop, their colours, dulled by soot but still bright against grey. People buy them anyway, as if colour itself is a cure. Prices are madness. A single loaf of bread costs as much as a silver candlestick. A jug of ale is worth more than a week's wages. Men grumble, fists tightening around purses, but still they pay because hunger laughs at fairness. You hear someone mutter that greed spreads faster than fire. You believe him. Others improvise trade. Children gather nails from ruins, offering handfuls in exchange for crusts. A man swaps a stack of burned timbers for a pot of stew. A woman trades her wedding ring for a sack of apples. You see her slip one apple into her child's hand, and the look on the child's face makes you blink back tears. For him, it is a feast. For her, it is a memory pawned away. Of course, Fraud flourishes too. A boy sells fresh water that tastes of river mud. A merchant promises flour in sacks that hold only ash. A man sells safe lodging under a leaky canvas, then vanishes in the night with the payment. The camp buzzes with curses, but no law stands here. Only hunger, coin, and chance. You clutch your own bundle tighter, debating whether to part with your coins. They feel heavy, useless, yet precious. You hover near a stall selling meat pies, the smell tantalizing despite the soot. You ask the price, and the merchant names a sum so outrageous you laugh bitterly. Then starve, he snaps, turning to the next desperate face. You walk away, pride hollow against the gnawing in your gut. Yet kindness endures, scattered but real. A baker distributes charred rolls freely, muttering that bread is worthless if no one lives to eat it. A fisherman shares a pail of eels, grilling them over a smoky fire for any who pass. A woman stitches torn cloaks with thread pulled from salvaged cloth, asking nothing but thanks. You realize that greed and generosity are both children of survival, each fighting for space in the ash. At night, the markets close, but barter never stops. Families trade stories for comfort, songs for silence, prayers for hope. You hear one man boast that he saved his warehouse's ledgers, as though numbers on a page matter more than the bread in his belly. Another laughs that he carried a sack of peppercorns through the fire, and now he sneezes each time he opens it. You chuckle, the sound dry but necessary. Humor still barters for sanity. The next morning, a new trade begins. Labor. Men offer to dig pits, fetch water, carry loads, in exchange for food. You join them, your muscles trembling, but your hunger sharper. Hours later, you earn half a crust and a sip of ale. It tastes like victory. You chew slowly, letting each bite linger, reminding yourself that survival is not dignity, it is persistence. Around you, the camp grows louder, more chaotic. Arguments erupt over unfair prices, fists flying, knives flashing. A brawl breaks out near the well, men grappling until soldiers stride in, scattering them with musket butts. Blood stains the dirt, but the market resumes within minutes. Even violence cannot pause commerce. You watch it all, eyes gritty, stomach aching, and realize that London has already begun rebuilding. Not with stone or brick, but with exchange. Goods, favors, lies, kindness. Everything has a price, and every price is paid. You curl into your blanket that night, brooch in your hand, coins pressed to your ribs, whispering that tomorrow you will bargain better. Survival, after all, is nothing more than a trade, and you are not ready to stop trading yet. The fire has mostly slowed now, coughing itself into scattered plumes of smoke and smouldering ruins, but the city is far from quiet. If the flames were a beast, then what stalks London now is something more insidious. Accusation. The fire may be dying, yet the search for blame burns hotter than the embers still glowing in half-collapsed streets. You wake to the sound of shouting in the fields, not cries for bread or water this time, but the voices of men arguing over who did this. At first, it feels like background noise, just another quarrel, like those that erupted over food or space. But soon you realize it is everywhere, in every corner of the encampments and every ruined street where survivors gather. Tongues wag sharper than knives. You walk among them and hear the stories repeated until they harden into belief. The French set it. It was the Dutch, revenge for the wars. The Papists sent agents with fireballs. Foreigners were seen tossing pitch into houses. Each claim contradicts the last, yet all are spoken with the same desperate certainty. You see the first mob at Bishopsgate. A man with a heavy accent is seized by the crowd, dragged into the street, accused of carrying combustibles in his coat. He cries that he has nothing, spreading his arms, but stones already fly. His blood spatters the cobbles before soldiers push through to scatter the attackers. The man staggers away, face ruined, his pleas drowned by curses. You stand frozen, bile in your throat, and realize the fire has given birth to a second inferno. Fear of the other. Rumor, spreads faster than ash. You overhear a sailor insisting that Jesuits were caught with matches hidden in rosaries. A woman mutters that Dutch prisoners confessed to throwing torches from the tower. Another swears she saw suspicious foreigners near the wharves just before the blaze leapt. None of it makes sense, yet none of it needs to. Logic drowned in smoke days ago. Now suspicion is easier to swallow than hunger. You pass a group of apprentices marching with clubs. Their soot-streaked faces alight with righteous fury. They shout that they will hunt the fire-setters, chanting accusations as if they were hymns. Behind them, mothers clutch their children tighter, pulling them away from the crowd's path. You think of the plague year, when people spat at strangers, calling them carriers of death. Now the same poison drips again, only in a new form. Historians still argue whether mobs killed dozens or only a handful. But standing here, you feel the truth in your bones. Suspicion killed as surely as flame. Even in the fields you hear it. At the wells, women whisper that the water is poisoned by foreign hands. In the makeshift markets, men glare at anyone with a strange accent, refusing to buy or sell. Children parrot their parents, pointing at strangers and shouting, "Frenchman, papist," as if the words themselves are weapons. Each glance at a foreigner now feels like tinder, waiting for a spark. And yet, there are sparks of courage too. You see a priest step between a mob and a terrified stranger, his cassock torn as stones strike him. He shouts scripture until the crowd falters, some ashamed, some merely bored. Soldiers too push back at times, driving mobs apart with musket butts. A neighbor you barely knew drags an injured Frenchman into her tent, defying angry stares to bind his wounds. These acts are small, but they shine against the gloom like tiny lamps in a field of ash. Still, the suspicion spreads. Pamphlets appear, crudely printed, blaming Catholics, foreigners, even the king himself. They pass from hand to hand like kindling, each page fueling the fire of anger. In taverns that still stand, voices rise in drink, cursing enemies imagined and real. You sit by one such group, clutching your bundle, and hear a man swear that London was betrayed from within. Another nods, vowing vengeance. You slip away before their eyes turn to you. At night, the paranoia keeps you awake. Every cough in the camp feels like a stranger's, every shadow a threat. You curl tighter around your bundle, the brooch pressed into your palm, whispering to yourself that you are not guilty, that the fire was wind and wood, not men. But deep down you know, truth does not matter when fear becomes law. The days that follow grow sharper with blame. A foreign merchant is beaten in the market. A sailor is thrown into a ditch, accused of torching houses. A woman screams at a neighbor, calling her a witch for surviving when others did not. You try to look away, but everywhere you turn, suspicion coils tighter, suffocating as smoke. And yet, amidst this fever, voices of reason rise too. The king issues proclamations, urging citizens not to attack foreigners. Priests preach mercy, urging love in disaster. Some listen, others jeer. You walk through it all, feeling the city at war with itself, torn between compassion and rage. One evening, you sit by a dying fire, bread long gone, stomach hollow. You watch sparks drift into the dark sky and think, fire needs fuel, and fear does too. Perhaps, like the flames, this fury will burn itself out once it has nothing left to consume. But for now, the city burns twice, once in ash, once in rumor, and you, clutching your bundle, still struggle to decide which fire is worse. The fire has left London smouldering, but the danger hasn't ended. Hunger and thirst gnaw at you day and night, but now another shadow creeps back into the minds of every survivor. Plague. The word itself drifts through the camp like a chill, whispered in corners, muttered in prayers, spat as a curse. Only a year ago, London had been a charnel house of pestilence, carts rolling through streets to gather the dead. The fire was supposed to have cleansed it, some said. The flames were God's broom, sweeping filth and disease from the city. But as you lie awake under a ragged blanket, throat raw from smoke. You wonder, has the broom swept too hard, or not hard enough? Every cough in the camp earns a suspicious glance. You clear your throat one morning and feel eyes on you instantly, sharp as daggers. A child sneezes nearby, and his mother yanks him close, whispering frantically for him to hush. Rumours fly that the wells are fouled, that corpses rot under collapsed houses, that rats still scurry through the ruins carrying death on their fleas. Historians still argue whether plague truly threatened in the aftermath. But in the fields, perception is more real than truth. People fear what they cannot see, and they see sickness everywhere. You walk the encampments and hear fragments of dread. A woman swears her neighbour's rash is plague spots. A man insists his fever came from poisoned water. A priest claims God has loosed plague as punishment on top of fire. Double judgment for double sins. His words ripple through the crowd, tightening throats, souring stomachs. Panic spreads faster than infection ever could. The filth of the camps doesn't help. With no sewers, waste piles in ditches, stinking under the sun. Children squat where they stand, flies buzzing thick. Water grows fouler each day, drawn from shallow pits where mud clings to every sip. You try to drink carefully, covering the cup with cloth to strain it, but still grit crunches between your teeth. Your belly cramps at night, and you wonder if it is hunger, bad water, or the first flicker of pestilence. The memory of last year's plague is too fresh. You recall the painted crosses on doors, the cries of "bring out your dead," the silence of entire streets where grass grew between cobbles, because no one remained to walk them. That terror never left you, and now it claws at your ribs again. Fire you can see, fire you can run from. Plague is invisible, creeping, patient. You almost long for the roar of flames, at least honest in their destruction. Accusations sharpen. Some mutter that foreigners not only set the fire but now spread disease. Others blame Jews, though they are few in the city. Some insist the wells are cursed, the food poisoned. In the markets, you see fights break out over spoiled meat, sellers accused of peddling plague-tainted goods. Soldiers step in, but even their presence cannot cleanse suspicion. Yet amid dread, there is also superstition's comfort. You see herbs tied to door frames, rosemary, rue, lavender, believed to ward off sickness. Families burn vinegar-soaked cloth, choking on the fumes, but swearing it purifies the air. Children wear charms of brass or bone around their necks, gifts from parents desperate to protect them from what no prayer can see. You wonder if any of it matters, but you tie a sprig of mint to your own bundle anyway. Survival is as much faith as it is food. One night, the camp stirs with alarm. A man has died suddenly, his face blackened, his body twitching. Whispers surge, plague. People scatter from his family, leaving them sobbing in isolation. You watch from a distance, heart hammering, torn between pity and terror. Later, soldiers carry the body away, muttering that it was smoke, not pestilence. But the seed of fear is already planted. For days after, no one goes near the family's tent. Their coughs echo unanswered in the night. You wander into the ruined city and see worse. Collapsed houses still hide corpses buried under beams and tiles. The stench rises in waves, sickly sweet, unmistakable. Flies cloud around the ruins. Some men drag bodies out with hooks, piling them in carts for burial. Others refuse, muttering that touching plague corpses will kill them. The line between fire's victims and pestilence's prey blurs, until you cannot tell which fear is greater. And yet, not all succumb to dread. Physicians, few but stubborn, walk the camps with their masks of leather and herbs, peering like birds of ill omen. They dispense powders, bleedings, prayers. Most sneer at them, but some cling to their words as lifelines. A preacher argues instead that the fire has scoured the city clean, that plague will never return because the filth is burned away. His voice brings cheers, a fragile hope, though his eyes dart nervously whenever someone coughs. The tension seeps into your bones. You catch yourself staring at neighbors too long, watching their skin, listening to their breath. You hate the suspicion, but it coils inside you anyway. At night, you press your brooch into your palm, whispering to yourself that you are not sick, that you will live. Still, you cough until your chest aches, and you cannot banish the thought that death may already be coiled inside you, waiting. Plague or no plague, the city festers, ruins smoulder, corpses rot, wells sour. The fire may have ended, but London breathes disease. You sense it in every foul gust of wind, every buzzing fly, and you know, with a cold weight in your gut, that survival is not simply outlasting the flames. It is enduring the shadow that follows, fear that the fire has not cleansed but cursed. You lie awake in the Ashbourne camp, eyes on the smoke-stained sky, and wonder if London will ever feel clean again. Morning comes grey, heavy, and damp. A low mist clings to the meadows where thousands of Londoners huddle. And for a moment, with the smoke thinned and the air wet against your face, you can almost trick yourself into believing the nightmare is over. But then you turn your head and the skyline answers. It is a jagged ruin, smouldering black teeth of chimneys, broken towers standing like ghosts, and a haze that still curls upward from the gutted city. The great fire may have slowed, but its shadow has only grown larger. And now, after flame, hunger, and rumour, another enemy creeps forward. Uncertainty. What will become of London? No one knows. And in the absence of answers, voices rise. You wander toward the centre of the camp, where crowds gather daily, not just for food or water, but for words. Leaders, preachers, merchants, even soldiers mount carts or barrels and address the sea of weary faces. Some soothe, others incite. You squeeze into the throng, clutching your bundle close, and listen as a preacher declares that the fire was divine punishment for sin. He lifts his arms, eyes blazing, and shouts that London must repent or perish. The crowd murmurs, some nodding in fear, others rolling their eyes, a few laughing bitterly. Another man clambers up after him, a merchant with soot still streaked across his cheeks. He argues that sin has nothing to do with it, that poor planning and wooden houses are to blame, that now is the time for rebuilding. He waves a scorched ledger as proof, swearing that trade will rise again if only the king invests in stone. His words stir different murmurs, hope, skepticism, anger. Two men shout back that the king has already abandoned them. Another insists the crown will pay for all losses. The argument turns into a storm of voices, and you step back, heart pounding. This is the new London, not brick and timber, but voices clashing, stories competing, certainty crumbling. You drift from group to group and hear dozens of versions. One soldier swears the king himself walked among the flames, giving orders, saving lives. Another insists the king stayed hidden, sending others to burn houses in his stead. Historians will still argue centuries later, but tonight, truth is irrelevant. What matters is who shouts loudest, who persuades hungry ears that their suffering means something. By afternoon, the debates sour into quarrels. You see two men grapple in the mud over whether foreigners set the fire or whether God's wrath did. They roll, fists swinging, until soldiers tear them apart. Children watch with wide eyes, mothers pulling them close, muttering that London is eating itself. And you know she is right. The next day brings another gathering, this one led by officials, sent from the city. They carry scrolls and proclamations, their voices thin over the din. They speak of compensation, of inquiries, of rebuilding plans. The crowd jeers. With what money? Someone shouts. With whose houses destroyed? Another demands. The officials stammer, promising that justice will be done, that property will be restored, that God has not abandoned England. There, words fall like ash, brittle and grey. You glance at the faces around you, hollow-eyed men, gaunt women, soot-streaked children, and realize no speech can rebuild what they lost. Words are air, and London needs stone. But air is all anyone has to give. At night, debates echo even in the tents. Families argue whether to stay in the ruins or flee to the countryside. Some say the city will starve. Others insist it will rise, stronger than ever. You listen to neighbors bicker over whether fire cleansed plague or invited it back. One mutters that rebuilding in brick will bankrupt the crown. Another insists the king has no choice. Their voices fade into the smoke-heavy air, endless as the crackle of cooling timbers, and in the silences between you hear weeping, soft, muffled sobs of people who no longer believe any version of the story. They lost homes, kin, everything, and no debate can mend that. You try to sleep, but dreams twist around you. You dream of men shouting in endless circles while the ruins sink deeper into ash. You dream of London rebuilt in stone, shining white, but filled with the same old fear. You dream of wandering forever, clutching your brooch, searching for a home that never appears. You wake shivering, blanket damp with dew, throat raw from smoke and arguments alike. The days repeat, each one thick with words, pamphlets spread through the camp, some blaming Catholics, others praising the king, others still demanding that the city be remade in a grander image. You pick one up, its ink smudging your fingers, and read lines declaring that London will be the envy of the world. You almost laugh. Around you, children pick lice from each other's hair, mothers fight over stale bread, men sharpen knives against imagined enemies. Envy seems far away, but not everyone despairs. You see sparks of resilience even in debate. A mason speaks of stone quarries, promising stronger houses. A carpenter sketches ideas for wider streets, less cramped, less dangerous. A widow announces she will open a shop again the very moment she can, fire or no fire. These words do not silence hunger, but they kindle something else. The possibility that London may not be dead, only waiting. And so you drift through another evening, ash clinging to your clothes, the sky glowing faintly where embers still smoulder. The fire is ending, but the noise has not. If anything, the noise is growing louder. Anger, faith, doubt, hope, all shouting at once. You clutch your bundle tighter, the brooch warm against your palm, and whisper into the smoky air. Survival is not quiet. Survival is argument. Survival is insisting, even through cracked lips and hollow bellies, that you still belong to something larger than ruin. London debates because London still lives, and you, weary and uncertain, live with it. Dawn comes sluggish and grey, the kind of light that barely distinguishes sky from smoke. You rub your eyes with soot-stained knuckles and rise from your damp patch of earth, your body aching as if you had wrestled all night with ghosts. Around you, the encampment groans awake too. Children whimper, dogs bark, mothers scold in tired voices, men cough until their chests rattle. The fire may have ended, but its echo lingers in every sound, every face. Today, though, the talk shifts yet again. Not flame, not plague, not foreigners. Today, the obsession is property. Everywhere you turn, you hear it. Men clutch their neighbors' sleeves, demanding witnesses to swear which plot of land belonged to whom. Women argue over boundary stones now buried under ash. A merchant waves a scorched deed like a flag, shouting that it proves his warehouse once stood on this corner. Another man laughs bitterly, calling him a liar, insisting that the ground is his by right. The word mine drips from every tongue like spit. You wander toward the city ruins again, curiosity dragging you through charred streets. Already, lines are being drawn, sometimes literally. Chalk marks appear on surviving stones, initials scratched into blackened walls. Families plant stakes in the ash, claiming the ground as theirs. A few erect crude signs. This land is the property of, scratched in soot-covered planks. You pause at one such marker and shake your head. The fire did not respect property. It devoured indiscriminately. Yet here, the living cling to ownership as if it were oxygen. Soon, Fights erupt. You see two men wrestling over a melted iron gate, each insisting it once guarded his shop. They roll in the ash, coughing, fists flying, until neighbors drag them apart. Another quarrel breaks out when a woman attempts to dig for valuables in a plot others claim as theirs. Stones fly. Shouts turn to screams. Soldiers intervene. Muskets, leveled, driving people back. The sight chills you once the soldiers fought the fire. Now they fight the people. The tension bleeds back into the camps. At night, voices rise over who buried what where. One man claims his chest of silver was stolen from beneath a hedge. Another swears he never touched it, though the glint of coins shows through his ragged tent flap. Accusations multiply until no one trusts anyone. You clutch your bundle tighter, pressing your mother's brooch into your palm until it digs into skin. Proof, you tell yourself, proof that something of yours survived. Historians still argue about how fairly the disputes were settled. Some claim courts would later bring order, compensating those who lost. Others insist corruption ruled, that the wealthy reclaimed more than they owned while the poor were brushed aside. But here in the ash, law feels distant. Only hunger, grief, and desperation matter, and they have no patience for parchment or seals. Even the crown stirs uneasily. Word spreads that officials walk the ruins, sketching maps, taking notes. Some mutter it means fairness. Others snarl that it means theft. You glimpse one such official near St. Paul's, his boots sinking into soot as he scribbles in a book. Citizens surround him, shouting questions. He ignores them, eyes fixed on his lines. When he leaves, the crowd hisses, curses at his back. You watch him go, wondering if those lines on paper will one day decide who eats and who starves. Yet in the chaos, moments of strange humanity flicker. You see neighbors agree, shaking soot-blackened hands, dividing ground evenly, promising to rebuild side by side. A widow gives up her claim to a garden so that children might play there instead. A mason jokes that London should be redrawn entirely, with streets wide enough to keep fire from leaping again. His audience laughs wearily, though some nod, considering. Still, fear prowls every corner. At night, you hear shouts in the camp. Thieves caught digging at another's pit, fights over hidden goods. Soldiers patrol more heavily now, their armor dull with ash, their tempers shorter than their swords. Even their presence cannot quell the unease. Trust has burned away as thoroughly as timber. You retreat often to the riverbank, where the Thames flows sluggish and grey, reflecting the smouldering ruins. Barges still move, carrying salvaged timbers, barrels of ash, even bodies. The water itself smells foul, choked with debris, but it is constant. You sit there, clutching your brooch, and wonder what it means to own anything anymore. Houses crumble, coins lose value. Even memory feels fragile. Perhaps survival itself is the only possession left. As days stretch, talk of rebuilding grows louder. Some insist the city must rise quickly, that trade demands speed. Others argue it must rise carefully, in stone, in order, in grandeur. But for now, those arguments are dreams. For now, London is still ash, and ash belongs to no one. That night, you lie on the damp ground of the fields, brooch in hand, stomach hollow, ears ringing with quarrels. You whisper to yourself, the fire took houses, but it also took certainty. And now, in its place, only dust and disputes remain. The city is gone. What comes next will be something else entirely. The days after the fire stretch long, heavy, and strangely hollow. The beast that once roared across London has slunk into embers, leaving only the stink of smoke and the silence of ruin. But silence does not mean peace. No sooner has the fire weakened than a new struggle begins, the slow, grinding attempt to rebuild, while ash is still warm beneath your feet. At first, the very idea feels impossible. You walk through the skeletal remains of streets that once pulsed with life, and your mind refuses to picture anything but what was there before. Cheapside was noise and colour, vendors shouting, fabrics fluttering in the wind, bells clanging above the crowd. Now it is a desert of blackened timbers, collapsed beams jutting at angles like broken ribs. A faint wisp of smoke still rises from one pile, curling into a sky sooty and grey. How do you rebuild when the ground itself seems to sigh with grief? Yet Londoners are nothing if not stubborn. Already, men and women pick through ruins, not for memory this time, but for foundation. They dig out bricks that survived, stacking them neatly for reuse. They gather nails, iron, stone, anything that fire spared. You pass one family carrying beams charred at the edges but still strong at the core, their arms trembling under the weight. The father grins through soot, declaring they will raise walls again by winter. His children nod, though their eyes still shine with fear. Disputes, of course, sharpen further. Who owns which brick, which plot, which timber? You hear neighbours shouting until their throats crack, soldiers stepping between them, tempers flaring as hot as the fire once burned. But beneath the quarrels you sense a truth. They argue because they still believe there will be something to rebuild. Argument, oddly, is proof of hope. Rumours about plans drift through the camps. Some say the king will order stone houses only, no more timber tinderboxes. Others whisper of a grand redesign. Streets widened, alleys straightened, fire breaks carved into the city itself. You even overhear one mason describe a vision of boulevards like those in Paris, so broad no flame could leap across. The listeners laugh, but a spark glimmers in their faces. Even in ruin, imagination refuses to die. Officials stalk the ruins daily now. Surveyors mark ground, scribbling in ledgers, measuring plots with strings and rods. Citizens crowd around, them demanding answers. The officials mutter promises, compensation, fairness, order, but suspicion festers. They'll rob us, a man spits beside you. The rich will take what the poor can't defend. You clutch your bundle tighter, silently agreeing that paper and ink are weak shields against hunger. Still, not every word is hollow. You hear whispers that Christopher Wren, a name spoken with awe by builders, is sketching designs for a new cathedral, one grander than the old St. Paul's. Whether true or not, the rumour spreads like balm. People nod, imagining spires rising from ash, bells ringing again, a skyline reborn. Historians will debate for centuries whether those whispers began here or later. But for you, huddled in the smoke-thick air, they sound like a promise worth clinging to. Meanwhile, life in the camps twists toward permanence. Huts of timber and cloth grow sturdier, ditches dug for waste deepen, small gardens planted in patches of soil. Children chase one another between tents, their laughter thin but real. A few brave traders set up stalls, bread scorched but edible, eels pulled from the river, cloth salvaged from shops. Prices are still cruel, but barter softens the edge. You trade a nail you scavenged for a crust of bread, chewing slowly, savouring each bite as though it were a feast. Nights remain hardest. Cold dew seeps into your blanket, and every creak in the dark feels like threat, of thieves, of plague, of despair. Yet even in the dark, London refuses silence. Groups huddle around fires, singing hymns or bawdy songs, telling tales of survival. You hear one man boast he carried his cat through the blaze. Another joke that the fire at least rid him of his mother-in-law's constant visits. The laughter ripples unevenly, half genuine, half forced, but it lifts the air all the same. Humour, again, is the ember no flame can kill. As days pass, the question hardens. Will you stay? Or will you leave this scarred place for the countryside, where fields grow green and skies are clean? You overhear families debating furiously. Some vow never to return. London is cursed, they say, marked for endless suffering. Others swear they will rebuild even grander, that fire is only fuel for pride. You stand between them, uncertain, staring at the skyline and wondering which voice is yours. In the ruins, you find strange relics. A melted pewter plate fused into stone, a scorched shoe, laces intact but leather brittle, a jar of preserved, Plums, cracked but unbroken, the fruit inside blackened but whole. Each object feels like a whisper from the city itself. Fragile, absurd, yet stubborn. You pocket a bent spoon, not for use, but for memory. Proof that the fire did not erase everything. Officials begin distributing bread sporadically. Soldiers, tossing loaves into crowds. Fights break out instantly, hands clawing, children screaming as men trample them in the scramble. You catch a loaf once, nearly losing your fingers to grasping strangers, and run breathless back to your patch of ground. You tear into it, the crust hard, the inside stale. But it fills your stomach for the first time in days. You weep as you chew, not from sorrow, but from sheer relief. At the same time, suspicion remains sharp. Any cough in the camp draws wary looks. Any stranger is met with narrowed eyes. The fire burned houses, but it did not burn fear. It lingers, seeping into every corner. You overhear whispers again about foreigners, about papists, about curses. The flames may have died, but paranoia smoulders, waiting for the right wind to flare anew. Yet the rebuilding inches forward. Day by day, you see more stones stacked, more timbers carried, more hands working instead of ringing. The city is not dead. It is wounded, scarred, staggering, but alive. You watch a boy laugh as he helps his father set a beam upright. You see a widow planting herbs where her garden once grew. You even hear bells again, faint and cracked, rung from a church that survived on the outskirts. The sound makes you weep openly, clutching your brooch tight, because it proves what your heart doubted. London still has a voice. And so, as the sun sets behind a haze of ash and cloud, you sit in the damp grass, exhausted but strangely certain. The fire took much, too much, but not everything. From the ruins, a new city will rise. Perhaps different, perhaps greater, perhaps haunted forever. But it will rise. You whisper into the smoky twilight that you will rise with it. Because survival, in the end, is not just about outlasting fire. It is about daring to imagine what comes after. The days after the fire stretch long, heavy, and strangely hollow. The beast that once roared across London has slunk into embers, leaving only the stink of smoke and the silence of ruin. But silence does not mean peace. No sooner has the fire weakened than a new struggle begins. The slow, grinding attempt to rebuild, while ash is still warm beneath your feet. At first, the very idea feels impossible. You walk through the skeletal remains of streets that once pulsed with life, and your mind refuses to picture anything but what was there before. Cheapside was noise and colour, vendors shouting, fabrics fluttering in the wind, bells clanging above the crowd. Now it is a desert of blackened timbers, collapsed beams jutting at angles like broken ribs. A faint wisp of smoke still rises from one pile, curling into a sky sooty and grey. How do you rebuild when the ground itself seems to sigh with grief? Yet Londoners are nothing if not stubborn. Already, men and women pick through ruins not for memory this time, but for foundation. They dig out bricks that survived, stacking them neatly for reuse. They gather nails, iron, stone, anything that fire spared. You pass one family carrying beams charred at the edges but still strong at the core, their arms trembling under the weight. The father grins through soot, declaring they will raise walls again by winter. His children nod, though their eyes still shine with fear. Disputes, of course, sharpen further. Who owns which brick, which plot, which timber? You hear neighbours shouting until their throats crack, soldiers stepping between them, tempers flaring as hot as the fire once burned. But beneath the quarrels you sense a truth. They argue because they still believe there will be something to rebuild. Argument, oddly, is proof of hope. Rumours about plans drift through the camps. Some say the king will order stone houses only, no more timber tinderboxes. Others whisper of a grand redesign. Streets widened, alleys straightened, fire breaks carved, into the city itself. You even overhear one mason describe a vision of boulevards like those in Paris. so broad no flame could leap across. The listeners laugh, but a spark glimmers in their faces. Even in ruin, imagination refuses to die. Officials stalk the ruins daily now. Surveyors mark ground, scribbling in ledgers, measuring plots with strings and rods. Citizens crowd around, them demanding answers. The officials mutter promises, compensation, fairness, order, but suspicion festers. They'll rob us, a man spits beside you. The rich will take what the poor can't defend. You clutch your bundle tighter, silently agreeing that paper and ink are weak shields against hunger. Still, not every word is hollow. You hear whispers that Christopher Wren, a name spoken with awe by builders, is sketching designs for a new cathedral, one grander than the old St. Paul's. Whether true or not, the rumour spreads like balm. People nod, imagining spires rising from ash, bells ringing again, a skyline reborn. Historians will debate for centuries whether those whispers began here or later, but for you, huddled in the smoke-thick air, they sound like a promise worth clinging to. Meanwhile, life in the camps twists toward permanence. Huts of timber and cloth grow sturdier. Ditches dug for waste deepen. Small gardens planted in patches of soil. Children chase one another between tents, their laughter thin but real. A few brave traders set up stalls, bread scorched but edible, eels pulled from the river, cloth salvaged from shops. Prices are still cruel, but barter softens the edge. You trade a nail you scavenged for a crust of bread, chewing slowly, savouring each bite as though it were a feast. Nights remain hardest. Cold dew seeps into your blanket, and every creak in the dark feels like threat, of thieves, of plague, of despair. Yet even in the dark, London refuses silence. Groups huddle around fires, singing hymns or bawdy songs, telling tales of survival. You hear one man boast he carried his cat through the blaze, another joke that the fire at least rid him of his mother-in-law's constant visits. The laughter ripples unevenly, half genuine, half forced, but it lifts the air all the same. Humour, again, is the ember no flame can kill. As days pass, the question hardens. Will you stay? Or will you leave this scarred place for the countryside, where fields grow green and skies are clean? You overhear families debating furiously. Some vow never to return. London is cursed, they say, marked for endless suffering. Others swear they will rebuild even grander, that fire is only fuel for pride. You stand between them, uncertain, staring at the skyline and wondering which voice is yours. In the ruins, you find strange relics. A melted pewter plate fused into stone. A scorched shoe, laces intact but leather brittle. A jar of preserved. Plums cracked but unbroken, the fruit inside blackened but whole. Each object feels like a whisper from the city itself. Fragile, absurd, yet stubborn. You pocket a bent spoon, not for use, but for memory. Proof that the fire did not erase everything. Officials begin distributing bread sporadically. Soldiers, tossing loaves into crowds. Fights break out instantly, hands clawing. Children screaming as men trample them in the scramble. You catch a loaf once, nearly losing your fingers to grasping strangers, and run breathless back to your patch of ground. You tear into it, the crust hard, the inside stale, but it fills your stomach for the first time in days. You weep as you chew, not from sorrow, but from sheer relief. At the same time, suspicion remains sharp. Any cough in the camp draws wary. Looks, any stranger is met with narrowed eyes. The fire burned houses, but it did not burn fear. It lingers, seeping into every corner. You overhear whispers again about foreigners, about papists, about curses. The flames may have died, but paranoia smoulders waiting for the right wind to flare anew, yet the rebuilding inches forward. Day by day, you see more stones stacked, more timbers carried, more hands working instead of ringing. The city is not dead. It is wounded, scarred, staggering, but alive. You watch a boy laugh as he helps his father set a beam upright. You, See a widow planting herbs where her garden once grew. You even hear bells again, faint and cracked, rung from a church that survived on the outskirts. The sound makes you weep openly, clutching your brooch tight, because it proves what your heart doubted. London still has a voice, and so, as the sun sets behind a haze of ash and cloud, you sit in the damp grass, exhausted but strangely certain. The fire took much, too much, but not everything. From the ruins, a new city will rise, perhaps different, perhaps greater, perhaps haunted forever, but it will rise. You whisper into the smoky twilight that you will rise with it. Because survival, in the end, is not just about outlasting fire. It is about daring to imagine what comes after. The fire is gone now, and though the ruins still smoke, the sky above has opened into a gentler grey. The panic and the shouts are behind you. What lingers is only the soft hum of people settling into new rhythms, hammering timbers, whispering prayers, lighting small campfires that do not destroy, but warm. Imagine for a moment, walking once more through the quiet streets, not when they burned, but now, in their stillness. The ground is cool under your feet, the air damp with the scent of ash and rain. Each chimney stands like a marker of what was lost, yet beyond them you see movement. Neighbours, carrying planks, children gathering nails, someone bending low to plant seeds in dark soil. The city is quiet, yes, but not empty. It breathes softly, like a body resting after fever. As you let this image settle, picture yourself lying down in the grass at the edge of the fields. The earth is solid beneath you, the smoke above thinning, the stars peeking faintly through the haze. Around you, the camp murmurs with low voices, but they are no longer frantic. They are steady, almost soothing, like waves breaking gently on a shore. Your own body begins to match that rhythm. Your breath slows, the ache in your chest eases. You feel the weight of exhaustion melting from your shoulders, replaced by something lighter, quieter. Yes, the fire was terrible. Yes, survival was harsh. But here you are, on the other side of it, safe in the cool night air. Think of the brooch in your hand, or whatever little piece of memory you carry. It presses against your skin, not heavy, but grounding. Proof that even in destruction, some pieces of you remain. Proof that tomorrow you will wake again, that tomorrow there will be another chance to build, to breathe, to begin. The fire will become story. Already, voices around you are turning it into words, weaving it into memory. And story, unlike flame, does not destroy. It carries, it binds, it comforts. One day, long from now, the great fire will be told in calm voices, just as you are hearing it now, safe and warm. So let the last sparks fade. Let the smoke drift into the sky. Let your eyes close gently, knowing the worst has passed, and that rest is not only deserved, but earned. Breathe once more, slowly, deeply, letting your whole body soften. Feel the ground beneath you, steady and cool. Feel the night around you, quiet and safe. The fire is gone, you have survived, and now at last you can rest.